Part 255. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2549. No. Probably not even on this planet. Oh, what a pity, it's almost dinner time, go back and have some food. Jia Yan disappeared on the highest hill in the city. The next moment, he appeared in his toilet, sitting on the toilet, smiling calmly. Xiaolin, your brother hasn't come back yet? He's not back yet during dinner time. His butt is itchy. I'll hang up the phone and ask. The people in the family are feeling quite resentful that he has not settled down yet. You know, Jia Yan's approximate age in this world is just when he has just entered high school. It is normal for his family to be worried. Toot toot. My sister Jialin just picked up the phone and hung up, but unexpectedly the call volume rang in the toilet. Click, Jia Yan walked out of the toilet while tightening his pants. No need to hang up. I'm at home. I just wanted to use the bathroom, so I came in without saying hello. Wow, brother, you scared me to death. I thought a thief had broken into the house. Jialin's face turned pale with fright. Looking at the state of her parents, it seems that Jialin did not tell her parents what happened during the day. This little girl seems to be very similar to Jialin in the outside world. Whatever she wants to do, she does it with her own ideas and is not prepared to talk to her at all. The way the family talks. When Jialin was in the outside world, she hid a lot of things from her parents in order to avenge herself. In this world, she seems to have reproduced this temperament. Even if she has talents, she is probably preparing to go out. After counting the results, telling your family about it can be regarded as a surprise. It's a pity that her brother Jia Yan has already seen everything. Okay. Well, mom's food is still delicious. Did anything happen today? Jia Yan picked up his mother Li Ying's rice, which tasted delicious. Nothing. Nothing happened to my parents. To them, everything today was just like normal. On the other hand, my younger sister Jialin hesitated and wanted to tell me about her talent test in the class, but she held back and did not say it. Because she couldn't figure out whether the testing machine was broken because her talent was too good, or because there was something wrong with the machine, so she might as well not say anything. Jia Yan actually didn't want them to say why they came, but he just wanted to ask the native creatures in this world, do they know that their era started from today? A true biological one. Before today, they were not living things at all, but just pieces of world code evolved by computers themselves. It's a pity that for these living beings, they don't feel anything at all. They just sleep for a while and turn into real living beings. For them, nothing has changed. Well, I will graduate in 2 days and then go to the front line to join the army. Do you have any objections? Click. Wu Sheng's bowls and chopsticks all fell to the ground. Wu's mother staggered and almost fell down. Sister Wu Lin's eyes were so wide that they almost popped out of her sockets. Brother, what are you talking about? Why go to the front line? What kind of strength do you have? Are you going to die? Xiao Yan, you can't say this nonsense. Going to the front line is only for people with bad families or strong people. Who from ordinary families like us would send their children to the front line? Jia Sheng looked like he was about to have a heart attack, and his face turned blue with fear. Mother Jia couldn't even speak. She looked at her son, as if she wanted to hear Jia Yan say from his son that this was just a joke. I'm not talking nonsense, parents. As a member of the city and this country, I naturally want to repay the country. I also want to stand out on the battlefield so that you can enjoy happiness. In addition, my little sister, my brother knows that your talent is extraordinary, which requires a lot of resource support, and your current family cannot afford it. After I become successful, I will be able to better utilize your talent. Jia Yan continued to chew the food in his mouth. It happened that no one had touched the food on the plate, so he just laughed and accepted it. Because this was his own family, even though it was a family member from another world, Jia Yan showed enough respect and told them about the matter, but he would never let them stop it. So before waiting for his parents who wanted to say anything else to say anything, he waved his hands and said, "No need to say any more, parents, you may not know that I am not the first type of person you say to die, but the second type of person you say. The second type, my strength is strong enough to protect myself on the battlefield. I didn't show it before, I was just dormant. Now that I am strong enough, it's time for me to show off." As if he was afraid that his parents would not believe him, Jia Yan waved his hand and moved the family, along with tables and chairs, to a park a few hundred meters away from his home. Suddenly, Jia Sheng, Jia Lin, and Li Ying saw that the scene in front of them changed into the scenery of a small forest in the park. The surrounding sunset and lights were shining on the small forest, making the scenery beautiful and picturesque. "This is also one of my abilities. Do you believe it now? Even if there is any danger, believe that I can escape at this speed, right?" Jia Yan smiled, looked at the sunset in the sky, picked up a plate of vegetables quite gracefully, put it in his mouth and chewed it. "Well. This. How?" The three of them were stunned. However, there are many levels of strength and various magical events in this world. For example, there are some systems and so on. If they suddenly come to an ordinary person, that person will suddenly become extremely powerful. Just because of hearing too many, so people's acceptance is quite high. I didn't expect that, Xiao Yan, you actually have such ability. Jia Sheng felt as if he had just met his son. He was quite shocked by his son's abilities and at the same time felt a little comforted. Since my son has such an ability, he cannot be restrained at home, and judging from his current attitude, it seems that he will not listen to what others say. Brother, you are actually such a strong person. Oh my God, are you moving so fast? Is it teleportation? Jia Lin's eyes widened even more, as if it was the first day she met her brother. Well, it can be roughly considered to be teleportation, but it is not as powerful as you think, and the distance it moves is not that far. Jia Yan nodded. Wow, it's amazing. With such speed, I don't have to worry about being late for school. I can sleep until 7:50 every day. Jia Lin almost jumped up. Brother taught me, I want to learn. You can't learn. In short, it's settled that I'm going to join the army on the front line. Trust me, I won't die on the front line. Jia Yan didn't want to explain too much, and he didn't want to say that his other abilities were probably above the ability to teleport, but it's always a bad thing to say too much. You just showed some strength, and you want to let your family. If you are so strong, others will definitely say you are bragging. Okay, since you want to go, then go, but promise your parents that if there is any danger, you will use your ability to escape. Even if a powerful man comes, you will run away if you see him from a distance. Okay. Of course, it's no problem. In that case, I'll go tomorrow. Is this so urgent? The procedures for joining the army don't take more than a day or two. No need to go to so much trouble. I will go to the front line to register myself and join the battle directly. Jia Yan said calmly, as if he was a suicide squad, and he was about to go to the front line whether he was going to die or not. The whole family felt deeply unfamiliar with him because of his deviant style. After all, their impression of Jia Yan was that he was a relatively quiet child, which is not quite right, but he was definitely an ordinary big boy. That's all. I didn't expect that after coming home late for just one day, my whole personality and behavior seemed to be quite different. If it weren't for the eldest son of the family whom they still knew deeply, they might all think that the son was taken away by some powerful cultivator. That's right, this world is a mixture of cultivator systems and magic systems, and there are even things like body snatching. I just passed the graduation exam and you're leaving. Early the next morning, Jia Yanhuan went to the so-called college where he was previously. He didn't even need to have his strength tested. He just asked for a diploma and an explanation to his parents. Fortunately, the graduation certificate had been prepared a long time ago, so the head teacher quickly turned it out and handed it to Jia Yan. Unexpectedly, after listening to Jia Yan's words, he knew that he was going to the front line, and his reaction was shared with his family. It was exactly the same when Jia Yan was going to the front line, with a fist in his mouth. Okay, teacher, I'm leaving. Thank you for your cultivation. In the future, you can be proud to say that you have taught Jia Yan. Believe me, this is the most glorious thing in your life. Jia Yan patted the teacher on the shoulder, as if he was very satisfied with the teacher. Hey, is it reversed? The head teacher was about to say something, but the young man in front of him said to himself again, I'm leaving. As a result, the figure flickered and disappeared. This so-called distant place on the planet. About 5,000 kilometers away, two armies were fighting fiercely with each other on the border. The battle line stretched extremely long, with lightning and thunder from time to time, the swords and shadows of cultivators, the huge energy of magicians, and the roars and roars of various demons from time to time. Some cultivators or magicians can create a land of extinction for tens of kilometers with just two people. The fight is earth-shattering, and it is basically a doomsday scene. Within 1,000 kilometers, people from both countries call it the front line, and this front line has been entangled for hundreds of years. The ground has been repeatedly bombed by various powerful people, and it has basically turned into scorched earth. The two armies originally wanted to seize the advantage and enter the other side's territory, but the strength of the two sides was not much different, and there were other countries around them that were watching eagerly, so they were unable to go all out. Therefore, this battlefield front line gradually it has become a place of entangled war between the two armies. The dead are constantly filling it, and a large number of heroes are born. The strong are being trained and become stronger every moment. Many people from both countries are accustomed to the existence here. Even the strong people just regard the front line here as a training ground. For the weak, coming here is a narrow escape, but for the strong with a certain strength, but it's just a training with almost no danger. Snapped. A young man flashed to the outskirts of this battlefield. He is Jia Yan. This is the front line. The fighting was quite exciting and the destruction was not bad. The battlefields that have lasted for more than 100 years are almost becoming ruins. Tisk, it's a pity that after I come, the history here will be rewritten. Jia Yan looked at his feet. He was wondering if he should leave a mark here so that people in the future could know that this was the historical place where Master Jia Yan first arrived on the battlefield. With a casual finger, a large piece of stone on the ground began to squirm. Under the movement of the brain waves, the place was superimposed and turned into a stone peak more than 300 meters high. Isn't it too inconspicuous to be so high profile? Forget it, I'm not such a high profile person. If I'm too high profile, I might be regarded as deliberately bragging. Jia Yan shook his head. He felt that he still had to keep a low profile. What? To say that he arrived here and built a peak of more than 300 meters is already very high profile? Are you kidding me? To know that he is actually a 50-kilometer giant mosquito, okay. It's just a mountain peak of more than 300 meters. I'm afraid the hair on his legs is longer than this. Why are you calling him high profile? Besides, I am too high profile to cut you off. Jia Yan sighed at how low-key he was, shook his head, and took another step forward. Today is a bit uncomfortable for the border leaders of Xinyi Kingdom. Although they have been fighting fiercely with the enemy in this position for hundreds of years, every day's work is not an ordinary day. There will always be huge opportunities and turning points. The seemingly dull battlefield is also changing rapidly, with good news and bad news coming from time to time. Today is a day with more bad news. What? Yesterday, a magician from Xinbei Kingdom beat a cultivator from our country and fled. Now the cultivator can only rely on the magic circle to support himself. Have you already asked for help from the headquarters? On the ordinary battlefield on the other side, an enemy force made a surprise attack on our army's rear area, causing 50 of our army's masters to suffer heavy casualties. Oh my God! The bad news from both sides made the Marshal of the Black Country feel a little uncomfortable. As a Marshal, he has put in a lot of effort on this front. After all, he has lived for more than 300 years. He was already a Marshal before this front was even opened. Later, the reason for opening this front line gradually evolved from the countermeasures he adopted to confront the enemy in this area. He has been trapped on this battlefield for 100 years. Even for a long-lived man like him, it is only 1/3 of his life. He can't wait to end this front so that he can escape from this area. Get out of trouble. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2550. The variables on these two battlefields will require a lot of magic power to be solved. And if we try to solve the crises in these two places, the idea that I laid out before to save this place once and for all will be completely useless, and I will be trapped again. I've been here for a long time, what should I do? The Marshal of Xinbei Kingdom was on the verge of tears. I originally said that I would come here just to carry out the command on one side's battlefield. I didn't expect that it would take 100 years for me to come here. It was so tiring. Marshal. A child actually broke into our headquarters army and said that he would apply to you personally to join the army. Just when General Xinbei looked a little troubled, a subordinate rushed out of the door and eagerly reported to the Generalissimo. What? Child? Are you breaking into our headquarters army? You can't take down this child. Marshal Xinbei's face was unhappy. He was feeling uncomfortable because of the war situation, and here comes another nonsense news. What is it called? Son. Moreover, the intelligence said that the child was going to break into the military camp. His subordinates and others had to report even such trivial matters to him. They were like cowards. They would not be caught and thrown out like the previous children. Yes, similar things happen all the time. Although the Grand Marshal himself is uncomfortable with his current status, he is actually a master who has guarded Nobue Kingdom for more than 100 years. Countless children are worshipping him. Every time after a while, some children wanted to break into the military camp and meet in person this indomitable hero in their dreams. He thought that the children who broke in again this time were the same existence as before, or that they had high self-esteem. He wanted to meet him in person, get some children with abilities that he valued, and then join the army. Although he did find several good children in the past few years and even developed several capable subordinates, none of them could make him shine. It just so happened that the war was getting a bit intense now, so he was unhappy with the new kid and wanted to get rid of him. But Lord Marshal, we tried to stop him, but he broke through repeatedly, and we couldn't stop him at all. What? If he said the first half of the sentence, the Marshal was still a bit old-fashioned, but the other half of the sentence made him suddenly come to his senses. Didn't even his own army stop the kid? No, it must be that the soldier knew that this was a child who admired him, so he didn't take any serious action against him. But even so, this kid is terrible. Let him in. I'll see him myself. The Grand Marshal straightened his face and spoke to his subordinate calmly. Don't bother me. Go call me. I'm already here. Before he finished speaking, he saw a young man with an arrogant expression walking in outside the door of the Marshal's office, holding his hands. In the opinion of the Grand Marshal, this young man's appearance is ordinary at best, but his temperament is too unique. He seems to be arrogant, but when his eyes scan people, even he can't help but feel trembling. You know, his combat power is almost the strongest in Xinhe Kingdom and Xinbei Kingdom, and he is the least and one of the strongest, but even a person like him reacts to the child's gaze. Interesting, little friend, please take a seat. After the general's expression changed, he did not investigate whether the child's arrogance was wrong. In short, if others can come to him, it means that they must be capable people. Maybe he will be one of his generals in the future. Of course, that requires after cultivation. Jia Yan nodded and sat down on the chair at the head of the marshal as if he was very familiar with it. The expressions of the marshal and the subordinate behind him changed. You must know that that position is usually the second most powerful person in the army. It was also the seat of the second strongest person in the army, but Jia Yan didn't care about it at all and sat directly on it. Is this a humiliation for that strong man? Of course, if no one says anything, it will be fine. Your marshal's office is not easy to get into. It's such a difficult place to enter, and I'm a little tired of looking for it. Didn't you even give me a cup of tea? Before the marshal could say what the superior said, Jia Yan was the first to speak, and in turn spoke in a condescending tone. This time, he gave the Grand Marshal another general. He was stunned for a moment. Thinking about it, he was right. He has been looking for the child for so long. Although he still doesn't know how he got here, he will definitely not be relaxed. He is thirsty. It's a matter of course. Okay, I was negligent. Go down and bring this kid a cup of tea. Yes, the subordinate responded quickly, looked at Jia Yan who was sitting under the marshal's hand strangely, and ran out quickly. He was not worried at all whether Jia Yan would take action against their marshal. If the strongest man in the army could be assassinated so easily, this generalissimo would no longer be their generalissimo. The subordinate left, and Jia Yan and the general were the only ones left in the empty and huge office. My little friend, I don't know why you are looking for me. The generalissimo was quick to talk, and he didn't want to delay any more time with Jia Yan. After all, there were still 2 battlefields for him to save. We will chat later and find out that this little kid has no abilities, so drink tea and drive away to save him from wasting rescue time. Kid? Are you talking to me? Haha, I am really looked down upon. Jia Yan was startled for a moment, and said with a little displeasure in his eyes. But after thinking about it, he realized that his current appearance was really just that of a high school student who had just entered high school. This generalissimo, who was rumored to be over 300 years old, was even far younger than his actual age, even though he was just a young man. The virtual age is really not a big disadvantage if you call yourself a child. Why do I always feel unhappy? So he was extremely domineering again and waved his hand without waiting for the other party to speak. Contempt? I already have 300, The generalissimo was about to say something, but he was immediately stunned because he saw the intelligence paper he had just received flying up in front of him, slowly but firmly flying towards the young man in front of him, and then being steadily picked up by the young man. In hand. He stared. At this moment, he could also feel some power moving around him, but this power was not like the aura, fighting spirit, magic power they possessed, nor was it like other energies he had come into contact with in the past 300 years. In short, it was it's weird, but it also has an amazing sense of potential explosion, as if you provoke this kind of power, you will be instantly wiped out. Is this kid really capable? Wow. Jia Yan casually flipped through the information text on the 2 pieces of paper in front of him. Although he was not a serious person in this world, due to the interference between the white dolphin and himself, this world also used the universal language and text, so he read gotta understand. Well, there are 2 crises on the front line, right? He put down these 2 pieces of information, and the words he said made the face of the general opposite suddenly change, and then he became a little uncertain. You know, this information is freshly released, and he is about to deal with it, but if this child knows it first, maybe once it is spread, their plan will fail. So since this child knows it, then you can't let him go for the time being. You can wait until the two pieces of information are settled before you let him go. As if his words were deliberately blocked in his mouth, Jia Yan simply said his next words. One is the battle between cultivators and magicians, and the other is the enemy's elite team entering the rear area. Well, I am not interested in the rear area, but I am still a little interested in the battle between magicians and cultivators. How about this, I help you deal with the magician's matter, and let you deal with the other matter by yourself to give you some face. What on earth is going on? The Generalissimo didn't know how to react to the child. It was obvious that he broke into his barracks office without permission, and then read the intelligence to himself, and then directly said that he wanted to join the war. And he also said that he had to deal with the battlefield between cultivators and magicians, that even he had a headache to send. You know, the two people on the battlefield, there were two major beings second only to himself. He had just thought about it. You have to go out in person. Kid, if you want to play games, you shouldn't come to the battlefield. Do you know where this place is? The Generalissimo finally couldn't hold it back and stood up with an ugly face. At the same time, he also released his cultivator power and waved his arm to return the two pieces of paper in Jia Yan's hand to his table. But after a wave, his expression changed. Not able to swing. He paused, thinking that he probably didn't pay too much attention to the child's strength in pinching the paper, so he failed to retrieve the two pieces of information, so he raised his hand and waved vigorously again. Call. There was a slight amount of wind blowing throughout the office. The paper in Jia Yan's hand remained motionless, not even the wind could lift a corner of it. At this time, the general's expression finally changed wildly. He looked up at the young man, and saw the young man looking at him with a gentle smile. His eyes were neither proud nor disdainful, but encourage. I am a grand marshal, being comforted by a child who is only a high school student at best with encouraging eyes. God, what's going on? The Generalissimo's expression turned gloomy no longer, and a strange power suddenly emerged from his palm, and he waved his arm again. Boom, the furniture in the office fell to the ground, large pieces of shredded paper, tables and chairs were overturned, and the center area of this force was the area where Jia Yan was. He had used several percent of his strength this time, even if he let the boy in front of him made a little fool of himself, such as being blown away by a hurricane or rolling on the ground several times, which would make him smile a little bitterly. But what made the Generalissimo's eyes bulge out of his head was that he saw Jia Yan like a motionless rock, sitting on the chair like an old god, continuing to look at him with encouraging eyes. Who the hell are you? The Grand Marshal didn't relax at all this time. He suddenly slapped his equipment with an ugly expression. A faint light flashed past. He put on the robe and then used a cultivator's long sword. Jianfeng was quite vigilant and aimed at the young man in front of him. Generalissimo, please don't be impulsive. I'm afraid this office will be destroyed if I get impulsive. Don't worry, I'm not your enemy. I'm also a true believer in the Black Country. If you don't believe me, you can go back and check. Jia Yan shook his head helplessly. Shaking his head, he felt that the Grand Marshal had really offended the wrong person. If he hadn't been merciful, his behavior of daring to point his sword at the senior domain lord would have killed such a weak person hundreds of times. Weakness is original sin. That's right, in Jia Yan's view, the super-powerful Generalissimo whom the entire Xinhe kingdom believed in was a weakling. What is your purpose? The Generalissimo naturally refused to believe Jia Yan, but at the moment he didn't realize that he needed to fight this mysterious person. Otherwise, even if the opponent was weaker than himself, I'm afraid it's not that weak. If we fight here, the morale of the army will definitely be messed up. Besides, he still has two battlefields that need to be rescued. If he fights them, those two battlefields will be lost. My purpose? Didn't you just say it? I'm here to join the army and make a name for myself. Please take me under your wing, please take me under your wing. Jia Yan scratched his head and realized that he didn't seem to make his purpose clear to others. His face turned red, and he felt that he was a bit deceptive. He showed off his power without explaining clearly, and he didn't look like a super strong person when he came to Shiyuan. Alas, it's just that this world is too realistic. I was a little over the top when I saw the military camp just now. It was a strong man and it was a sci-fi future weapon. It was so interesting that I forgot its original purpose. You want to join the army, this. The Generalissimo subconsciously wanted to say that he didn't believe it, but his subordinate who was still in the office just now came back with a tea tray and stood at the door of the office, looking at the mess inside and the Generalissimo still wearing a battle uniform. He was a little stunned. Click. The young man Jia Yan walked up to the subordinate at some point, picked up the tea cup he brought up, and took a sip. What a good tea. It leaves a fragrance on your lips and teeth. It is indeed a tea that a general can drink. I like. After saying that, he looked back, and the general, who seemed to be shocked by his speed, said calmly, "Let's do this, I won't let you be too frightened. Let's first use the battlefield between cultivators and magicians that I just mentioned. The certificate of surrender is ready. During this period, you can send people to investigate my information, but you have to act quickly. If I haven't completed the investigation when I come back, and if you start shouting at me again, I will be angry." After Jia Yan finished speaking, he walked out talking to himself. Wait, are you going to deal with the two masters on the battlefield over there? There are two strong men there who are far beyond imagination. Wait. The Generalissimo quickly chased after him, but as soon as he turned a corner, he was stunned. Because there was no human figure anywhere in the straight corridor in front of him, the young man just missed the turn and disappeared in front of his eyes. Holy shit! Who is this kid? Hurry up and get someone to investigate all the information about this kid's identity and strength. I want the fastest and most detailed information. Hurry up. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Buletin Yu. Chapter 2551. Yes, the subordinate followed the order and left. The Generalissimo's expression became quite fierce, and he even felt a little bit of horror deep in his heart. Whether it was his own spiritual power to induce the erotic newspaper in the child's hand, or his ability to quickly disappear in front of his eyes just now, this young man was elusive to him. The speed alone is so terrifying, if the combat power is also so exaggerated. No, even if the fighting ability is not good, as long as you have such speed, you can come and assassinate me while you are not looking. The Generalissimo trembled all over and felt that he did not dare to think deeply. As a high-ranking official of Xinhe country, he fully knows that there are extremely powerful beings in this world. In the eyes of the world, cultivationists, magicians, fighting strong men, brave men, devil kings, superpowers, etc., etc., these powers are only a rough foundation. In the eyes of ordinary people, in an unimaginable world, not only cultivators have stronger existences, but magicians are not as strong as the world knows at all. All other cultivators have more advanced versions. It's just that their world is too weak, so they can't see that kind of intensity. Power from the stars. The Grand Marshal looked at the starry sky above his head. If this child's power comes from the starry sky, it can be explained, because only existence in the starry sky can make an ordinary child in their homeland become as powerful as he is today. but even if it comes from other civilizations or cultivation forces in the starry sky, it is unlikely that a genius will surpass me at this age. Unable to figure it out, he could only give up his idea and wait until the child's information was sent over before he could analyze it properly. As for where this child left at the same speed just now, he also had some guesses. Didn't he hear that he was going to solve the problem of strong cultivators and magicians? With such speed, I must be able to help. Even if I can't help, I won't turn it into a disservice. No, I have to remind that guy. After thinking about it for a while, he walked to the unique communicator and sent a message of his. Although I don't know whether the so-called cultivator is in a fierce battle over there, and whether this news will disturb his battle in the past, the news still has to be sent, otherwise this guy will see the little brat suddenly intervened in his battle and attacked the child, causing the child's death. The marshal was also a little bit intolerant. Okay, everything is done. Let's see if this kid will bring any surprises to this battlefield. The 50-man assault team on the other side, let me go there in person. There must be experts in this enemy attack force. It's not safe if I don't go there in person. After thinking for a while, he stood up, and under the respect of everyone, he flew up and slowly flew to another place far away from the position. Jia Yan doesn't understand what's going on with the Generalissimo. But he roughly knew that the Generalissimo must have been shocked by him. Maybe this guy will associate me with people outside this world, haha. Jia Yan smiled. His body was gradually flying in the air. The ability to move like teleportation is actually using the energy in the air to use a technique similar to subspace travel. However, this technique is much simpler than subspace travel. I am afraid that all subordinates who come to this world will realize it themselves. And this teleportation ability is not much faster than flying at full speed. It just so happens that Jia Yan also wants to show his face in the eyes of the world, so he flies directly in ordinary space to be seen by many soldiers and residents. There were several barracks to fly from the battlefield where the cultivator was, and among them there were several towns that were not afraid of life and lived beside the battle lines. They were all towns that sold daily necessities and provided entertainment for the soldiers. And his passing attracted the attention of these towns. Jia Yan didn't hide himself too much, because he wanted to let others know his existence. After causing a sensation, it was considered that his subordinates who may exist on this planet would notice his existence, and then take the initiative to come and recognize him. Of course, another more important point is that he wants to increase his popularity so as to obtain more resources in the world so that he can improve his current strength. Beyond this world, there are other planets, and other planets generally have living things. After all, the living space here is said to be large, but essentially it relies on the energy of me and the white dolphin to maintain and consume. If we create there are too many planets and fake starry skies, which are detrimental to our consumption, so although there are many planets in the outside world, none of them are wasted into ordinary planets that are deserted. This planet is just one of many planets. There are planets in the outside world that are much larger and more powerful than this. Therefore, the Generalissimo may have misunderstood me as one of the disciples taught by someone from another planet. I guess, but it's a pity that although I am from the outside world, I am more outside than he imagined. Haha, I went directly to the outside that seems to be different from this universe. Let's talk about it. I'm afraid he can't even imagine it. Jia Yan has no intention of revealing his identity. After all, he is the person who is ready to control the world. If he has said everything, how can he feel like he will control the world and become a god in the future? After thinking so much, he continued to raise his energy and flew quickly towards a battle place ahead. As expected, this is a battle place between the so-called cultivators and magicians. It's very powerful. After Jia Yan flew to the place with explosion marks everywhere, his expression changed slightly, and then he felt a little surprised. Of course, the fighting ability between the two is like a baby to him, but this is also a relatively powerful baby. The ground is full of holes. If we measure it by the strength of ordinary strong men in the outside world, it is as strong as a heaven-level strong man. The fight was earth-shattering and can barely be used to describe the fighting power between the two. I saw that within the entire battlefield, within about 5 kilometers, there was a battlefield belonging to them. On the edge of the battlefield, people from both sides were fighting and confronting each other. It was just that these people were obviously absent-minded, because they knew that the outcome of this war would be determined. What is happening is not the battle here, but the battle between the two powerful men who are engaged in the final battle in the center of the battlefield. Is there a dispute between cultivators and magicians? According to the intelligence just now, the cultivators are at a disadvantage on both sides. How can this be done? How can it be possible for the cultivators I have placed in this world to lose to the magicians? Jia Yanfei entered directly above the battlefield, completely ignoring the ordinary fighting groups. Then he came to the center of the roaring battlefield. I saw a semicircular light curtain on the ground, and above the sky on the ground, there was a man in a top hat flying in the sky. He was mumbling words, and then bombarded by a force that only belonged to the origin of this world. It rose up and hit the light curtain, causing the light curtain to collapse and almost to be destroyed. Inside the light curtain, there was a man sitting cross-legged with blood stains on his chest. He had obviously just vomited blood not long ago, and there was an ancient servant's sword beside him. If you knew, you would see this. The long sword is the sword of the sect that was left behind by the founder of their sect who ascended to the throne. Tisk tisk, the magician used the original power in the air. It seemed to have borrowed the power of the white dolphin. There was also a part of my power in the middle, so that the power changed its mode and turned into a ball of fire, and then bombarded the defensive formation. What? Jia Yan stood higher in the sky, and no one noticed his arrival. He just looked at the shocking battle below in amazement. There were many things that amazed him. For example, the so-called magician's top hat and the man wearing a magic robe. The power he uses is a kind of power that borrows the white dolphin creature and his own power, and converts these two powers into magic power. This kind of power has gradually accumulated over thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years, and history cannot be traced back. Of course, if we describe it in the language of computers, it means that the computer consumed a lot of energy and calculated for a long time before evolving this power usage model to what it is today. To put it bluntly, this is also the result of computers, not the efforts of predecessors in this world. However, the predecessors are also part of the computer, and it is correct to say that they worked hard. Tisk, tisk, magic, it's a bit arrogant. As for the cultivators, Jia Yan looked at the cultivator and was even more surprised. Regarding the simple and crude transformation of magical energy, he was even more curious about the transformation of the power of the so-called cultivators. Their power was like cultivating the local energy, adding the power of the soul, and various tests of inner demons. The pure power of a cultivator can only be cultivated. It's really useful for reference. Even with the cultivation methods in this world, their mastery of the mind seems to be close to or even better than mine. After Jia Yan looked at it, he was even more amazed. That formation uses two forces to combine, and then releases a light that resists the enemy and keeps the enemy away. And it seems that the thickness of the light curtain is not large. In fact, the thickness of the light curtain is not reflected in the thickness. It is reflected in the formation accommodation inside. Every point of the light curtain has a lot of calculation and maintenance. For Jia Yan, it seems that compared to another so-called magician, it is more difficult to practice and more difficult to achieve purity. But everything has advantages and disadvantages, and there are advantages as well as disadvantages. Like these so-called magicians, they can practice magic purely because they have an affinity with the energy in the sky, or they have an affinity with the energy of the white dolphin creature. Either you have affinity for my energy, otherwise you can't release magic at all. This is like eating from God, but it's like eating from me and the white dolphin. In other words, a person with pure talent and high power. As for cultivators, their talents are not suitable for practicing magic. It can even be said that their talents are weaker. For example, the so-called cultivator in front of me has a much lower talent than a magician, so he can only find another way. With tremendous hard work, he has reached the level where he can be compared with a magician today, only slightly weaker. However, it seems that we are still going to lose. After Jia Yan was amazed, he shook his head, knowing the outcome of this battle. If he does not come, the cultivators will eventually lose the battle due to the gap in strength, and then the entire battle process in this war zone will be reversed because of this battle. Forget it, I'm here. I can't help but save people. Jia Yan shook his head and then fell freely towards the battlefield below. Surrender wisely, Qing Sheng, your belief in the Black Kingdom is no longer enough. We believe in the White Kingdom. Strong men have emerged in large numbers recently, and more strong men have emerged in the new young generation. You believe in the Black Kingdom, but you are still refusing to accept it. If you listen to me, just a word of advice, just surrender and join my Xinbei Kingdom, so that I can give you a high position and you can enjoy glory and wealth in the future. Needless to say, Edward, I know what you mean. Don't you just want to divide my front and cannibalize it? I don't know what others are like, but I, a young man, am a great cultivator. I'm people who keep their word and have self-belief cannot surrender to you and others. If you have the ability, break through my formation. Is that so? Sure enough, you are someone who cannot give in easily. However, do you think you can stop me just by relying on such a formation? Haha, you are so underestimated. The magician named Edward reached up to the sky, and then a magical light of a six-pointed star appeared above his head. You know the formation, and we magicians also know the magic formation. Now I'll let you see if the strongest blow we shoot with the magic formation can have an effect on your formation breaking method. He waved his hand, and rays of light appeared inside the central point of the magic circle, and there was an earth-shattering terrifying aura that quickly filled the entire place, almost about to attack. If the energy and strength of the two of them when they were fighting just now were comparable to those of heaven-level experts, then the attack power of this magic array reached the level of mid-level heaven level, and could deal with the cultivator array below. Law can be said to be more than enough. Very good. If you don't let up at this juncture, then I will waste some energy and strangle your formation and you together. It depends on me. When Edward the magician saw that the cultivator man below him still refused to admit defeat, his expression suddenly turned colder, and he was about to attack the magic circle in his hand directly on the cultivator's formation below. But before he could finish his words, a stinky foot wearing a shoe fell directly from the sky and stepped on the light of the magic six-pointed star he had erected. Puff! The magic circle was instantly crushed. Puff! Then the foot landed on Edward's cheek, causing his whole face to deform. Boom! It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Buletin Yu. Chapter 2552. A large amount of smoke rose up from the ground, and then I saw that even the formations of the cultivators were shattered by this earth-shattering bombardment. Click, click, click. The demeanor of the cultivators in the formation changed drastically. After looking up, they saw that the formation above their heads was shattered, and there was no possibility of holding on for a moment. Then he saw a person rushing to his side. Oh no, it was one person, rather two people. One of them stepped on the other person's cheek and directly stepped him into the ground. Rumble. The deafening sound of the earth shattering came. The man who was supporting the formation seemed to have been struck by lightning. His whole body was involuntarily hit by a huge shock wave. He was rolling on the ground in a state of embarrassment, unable to stop even if he wanted to. Come down, completely involuntarily. When he was bruised and broken by the fragments of the formation, rolled 2 kilometers away, and stood up from the ground in a state of embarrassment, he was stunned to see that the large battle ruins in front of him had changed. This appearance was far more terrifying than the destruction caused by their previous battle. What is going on? He was already confused inside. He just said that he saw 2 people, but then he was blown away, so he was not sure about the scene just now. He could only say that he was shocked and wanted to explore for a while before deciding whether to leave. There was no need for him to explore with all his strength. After the surging smoke and dust were quickly swept away, he saw only 2 figures at the center of the messy explosion, which were exactly the people he had just glimpsed. After seeing the 2 figures clearly, the self-proclaimed cultivator's face became even more frightened, and it could be said that he was shocked. Because one of these 2 figures is nothing, except that he is too young, like a child, and I don't recognize him at all. But another figure was the reason why he was so frightened. Because this person was the magician who was fighting with him just now and had the upper hand, trying to smash his cultivator formation, the top magician of Zinbei Kingdom. The arrogant master just now is like a dead dog. Oh no, he is already a dead dog. He was trampled under the young man's feet and turned into a corpse. How? What happened? He was killed in one blow. The cultivator's expression looked like he had eaten dog shit, and he seemed to have doubts about the world. He simply couldn't believe the scene in front of him. After all, the enemy who had been fighting to the death just now turned into a corpse in an instant. It was a scene that was incomprehensible to anyone and was quite shocking. You are the cultivator who asked for help just now, right? I have killed your enemies. Can this mission be considered completed? The young man turned back calmly and looked at the man. Ah, asking for help, yes, I asked for help, but I am asking the Grand Marshal to come. The man was stunned and said this subconsciously. Oh, Jia Yan's expression seemed unhappy. So, you want the Generalissimo to come to rescue you, but you don't want to see me at all? It seems that I came to the wrong place. No, no. I made a mistake. It's not that I don't want your help, sir. I just didn't expect it. Your Excellency is too faceless. I don't know who you are. The cultivator man felt that he had made a mistake and quickly apologized in panic, but he still felt quite unable to identify Jia Yan's identity. You can just call me Jia Yan. As for the rest, I don't want to say more. You will know when you get back. Okay, now the mission is completed, right? Do you want me to take you back to practice, or go back to the headquarters by yourself? I can just go back by myself. Thank you for your kindness, sir. There are still some things that I need to deal with here. Seeing that his kindness was ruthlessly rejected, Jia Yan didn't feel uncomfortable at all. He just nodded casually, and then with a flash of light, the figure disappeared out of thin air in front of the cultivator in front of him. What kind of movement is this? I can't even see anyone. The cultivator man was trembling all over, feeling that his outlook on life had been rewritten. Jia Yan, on the other hand, didn't care what he thought at all. He only needed to know that he had solved the problem here, and when he left, he accidentally took away the magician's wand and a little bit of practice. Utensils. What is cultivated in this world is not really spiritual power or magic, but Jia Yan's energy and the energy of the white dolphin, so any powerful items Jia Yan gets can be converted into the power of the two. And he does not use his own power to assist in fighting, so he must swallow more external forces. The ultimate goal is to destroy the balance of power between him and the white dolphin, causing his own battle to become a victory, so that the world will be dominated by him. This lord feels, maybe, stronger than our Generalissimo? How could it be possible? Isn't the Generalissimo the strongest person in our country? When did such a powerful figure appear? I'm afraid he's not a modern person at all, even if he looks young, he might be hundreds of years old. The cultivator man's face was extremely dumbfounded, and then he was a little crestfallen. In fact, he was also a person who admired strong men like the Generalissimo. When he was young, he wanted to become the Generalissimo's helper. Unexpectedly, his dream has come true now. Only to find that the world is much bigger than they imagined. Puff. Not long after Jia Yan left the Generalissimo's camp, he took another step forward and descended from the sky to the outside of the camp office. Are you back? Well, the Generalissimo has already gone to deal with the problem in another place. I wonder if you are going there to investigate the information. The general's subordinate who had greeted Jia Yan came forward and carefully asked Jia Yan for information. Jia Yan's series of performances just now, as well as the general's instructions before leaving, made him deeply understand that although he was just a teenage boy in front of him, he was also an elder, and he could not offend that kind of uncle. Exploring intelligence? No, I have solved the problem there. Tell the Generalissimo what position I will be assigned to. If it is arranged, I can go out to carry out the mission. If not, I will fight alone. Went to the kingdom of Xinbei. Jia Yan said calmly, and then walked towards the Generalissimo's office. He just knew that there was a resting place in this big office. From now on, this place is his. Seeing Jia Yan talking to himself, he pushed open the locked Generalissimo's office, and then entered the office lounge with ease. The subordinates behind him twitched their mouths, feeling that they didn't know how to do things. Stop it! The Generalissimo has just made it clear that if this child comes back and needs to be treated with kind words, don't be angry, because his speed alone may be a very troublesome existence. Don't stop him. It's his duty. He didn't perform the task well. If someone blames him afterwards, he might have to bear the responsibility. Okay, you go down and I'll take a rest. Jia Yan walked to the big sofa in the lounge and sat down, waving the man away. Okay, please rest. I will notify you as soon as the Generalissimo has a reply. Jia Yan was non-committal, and the man quickly exited the lounge. Click. When he arrived here, Jia Yan waved, and a long magic wand flew out of the space. There is also something similar to subspace in this world, but it is not a subspace, but a space with a lower level than subspace. Jia Yan's teleportation is carried out through this space. In fact, he and the white dolphin are in it. The energy background of living things can be found in almost every corner of the world. And he is the master of energy. Even if he only occupies a small share of energy, why can't he come and go freely in it? It is said that in this world, there are also many natives who have used the energy background of him and the white dolphin creatures all over the world to develop abilities similar to teleportation. Of course, they are actually flying at the same speed as Jia Yan and others at the speed of light in the interstellar space. Still a lot worse. Wand, there is some magic circle engraved on it, but it is just a way to use our two energies. Haha, as the saying goes, everything returns to its original owner. Now all this energy belongs to me. It looks like a white dolphin on it. If you have more energy, then I'll accept it. Jia Yan sensed that the white dolphin creature had more energy, and the energy he occupied on the wand was only a tiny bit, which was just to his liking. No matter how small a mosquito is, it is still meat. Jia Yan himself is a cosmic superpower transformed from a small mosquito. How could he not know this? Poof. The magic wand melted quickly in Jia Yan's hand, and then turned into a piece of liquid, which was directly sucked into Jia Yan's body. Tisk, tisk, such a small amount of power is not even as strong as an Earth-level strongman, but it still makes my body on the surface strengthen a little, which is better than nothing. Jia Yan was not disappointed, because the moment he got the wand, through the perception of energy, he knew that the wand only had so much energy. Although for the magician, it was probably a massive increase, but for him as far as I'm concerned, that's totally useless. But as the saying goes, a little bit is a little bit. Ouch, oh, this body is still a little sleepy. Even if I sleep, I don't know when the Generalissimo will come back. Jia Yan fell asleep and soon felt someone coming outside the door. Then he woke up, yawned, and walked out of the secret room, and saw the Generalissimo sitting in the office outside the door. I'm back. Okay, they have talked about my affairs. Now assign me tasks and positions. If not, I will go to Xinbei Kingdom by myself. I will come back after destroying Xinbei Kingdom, he said calmly. The corner of the Generalissimo's mouth twitched as he sat on the chair. He wanted to say that Jia Yan was too courageous to even say such words. Is Xinbei Kingdom so easy to destroy? But thinking about Jia Yan's performance on the battlefield just now, especially the cultivator who was his right subordinate, when he contacted him, he almost praised Jia Yan as a heavenly being, and he immediately restrained his thoughts of talking about Jia Yan. This child is still a very good person. Apart from being a little bold and whimsical, he is not weak in strength. Well, I should say that he is not weaker than himself. He cannot destroy Xinbei Kingdom. He will definitely be a powerful force against Xinbei Kingdom in the future. So you can't offend. Let's do this. You are quite strong. How about I let you serve as the nominal deputy marshal of our legion? As for the task, how about I let you go and take charge of the base camp in the west first? If possible, I will apply with the people above. It is said that it is an application, but in fact, the Generalissimo in Xinhaiguo is like a decision, and no one will object to what he says. Deputy Marshal, Jia Yan was stunned for a moment, and then looked deeply at this important man, feeling that he was a bit contemptuous of him. After all, how could a Grand Marshal trust a child who appeared out of nowhere? No matter how strong he was, he couldn't rise to the top and become a marshal all at once. But he didn't expect that he would have such pressure, and he could do what even Jia Yan couldn't do. Is it the base camp in the west? Are there many combat missions there and is it stressful? Jia Yan did not respond to the deputy marshal's statement. He just asked indifferently. There aren't many combat missions there, and the pressure isn't great. You've just arrived, so I think it takes some time to get familiar with military affairs. No, just let me go to the front line. I told you, I want to destroy the Xinbei Kingdom in a short time. Then I want the Xinhai Kingdom to completely rule this planet. There is not much time. Click. After saying these words, even the extremely calm Generalissimo himself crushed the teacup that had just been brought to his mouth into pieces. What did he hear? This child named Jia Yan not only wants to devour the Xinbei Kingdom, the enemy of the Xinhai Kingdom for hundreds of thousands of years, but also wants to annex the entire planet. Are you crazy? No, the kid's demeanor and tone didn't look like he was crazy. If it's not crazy, then it's too arrogant. He was so arrogant and wanted to annex the entire planet. Such an idea had never occurred to him since he was a child. The Generalissimo considers himself to be a very generous person. When he was a child, he had the idea of defending his country because the Xinhai Kingdom had been retreating steadily under the attacks of the Xinbei Kingdom and was almost destroyed. In the end, the dream came true, and he became the top powerhouse protecting the entire country. He protected the motherland even though his authority was almost not under that of the head of state. But this kid was good. He directly said that he wanted Xinhai Kingdom to annex the entire planet. You must know that whether it is the Xinhai Kingdom or the archenemy Xinbei Kingdom, they are just small countries on this planet. On their continent, there are a total of more than 30 countries, large and small, and outside this continent, there are 5 such continents, and the countries on each continent are extremely powerful. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Buletin Yu. Chapter 2553. This is really an extremely grand wish. It is indeed a formidable future. Then, well, I will let you be at the forefront of the Central Department. Whether it is combat or intelligence exchanges, there is no shortage there. You can go there at any time. And I did make you Deputy Marshal, so you can mobilize the army in the future. Thank you, but you have to do these things quickly. I don't have much time to capture this planet. Jia Yan nodded and spoke nonchalantly. I wonder how long you want to capture this planet. Jia Yan thought for a moment, and then said something that made the Generalissimo almost spit out the tea from his mouth. Just 1 year at most. After 1 year I have to go to other planets. Puff. It wasn't that he was confused, but that he really squirted. The general squirted the tea all the way, and then looked back at Jia Yan in shock. After he learned about the young man's battle just now, he silently thought that this young man might have surpassed him. But no matter how he surpasses himself, it is impossible to reach the point where he will die directly. In other words, there may be a being on this planet who can defeat the boy. His so-called idea of ruling the entire planet seemed rather nonsensical, but the Generalissimo would rather believe that as long as the young man worked hard, he might be able to do it in his lifetime. But what does he hear now? 1 year? The entire planet was annexed in 1 year? Are you thinking a little too much? It seems that this big shot just found out today that the so-called big talker really, oh no, what is the ultimate form like? Ruling the planet in 1 year is just like the Earth back then. A country said it would rule the entire Earth in 1 year. That was quite a joke. You might as well say that it would develop a spaceship within a year, which would be even worse. This is more likely. Haha, can't summer insects speak ice? In short, Your Excellency, Generalissimo, just watch and give me the right to command and fight on the front line, and I will give you the results immediately. Jia Yan could obviously understand what the Generalissimo meant, but he did not feel particularly unhappy. As a strong man with a lot of life experience, he had already felt all kinds of emotions and emotions. He knew the feeling of being looked down upon very well today, and anything he said in this situation would be treated as a joke. So, let him see how he managed to conquer this planet in 1 year. But this kind of achievement comes at the cost of absorbing half of the planet's energy, haha. Jia Yan naturally does not do anything in vain. What he does here is entirely at the expense of absorbing most of the absorbable energy on the planet into his own body. Otherwise, who will help this country fight life and death? Puff. Jia Yan raised his steps and walked out. Where are you going? Seeing that Jia Yan seemed to want to leave his office, the Generalissimo couldn't help but ask. Vaguely, he seemed to have guessed what this young man would say based on his character. As expected, Jia Yan said meticulously, I'm going to the front line right now. Your Excellency, the Generalissimo, won't allow it? It's okay to go, but I also want to introduce you to my colleagues. I can't say that our army has a deputy marshal, and even most of the senior officials have never seen him. In addition, if possible, I also want to help you clean up the dust. Hold a promotion ceremony for you and so on. The Grand Marshal looked businesslike, but deep down he seemed to already understand the answer. As expected, Jia Yan casually raised his hand and shook it. No need, this time is enough for me to destroy Xinbei Kingdom. Okay, I will go directly there, you follow. Let the people in the Central Theater say something to prevent them from attacking me. After Jia Yan finished speaking, he didn't even wait for the Generalissimo to say anything. He stepped lightly up to the sky as if he were walking on flat ground, and leaped high into the sky at the same pace as the blue clouds. He is like a new recruit who has high ambitions but low power, and can't wait to go to the front line to perform meritorious service. However, this recruit is a bit special, that is, his strength is probably very different from ordinary recruits. Humph, is that really true? This kid is really trying his best. I just don't know if his so-called rule of the entire planet in 1 year is really true, or is it just wishful thinking? Lord Marshal, do you really think he can do it? Isn't this totally a mental disorder? Beside the Generalissimo, the subordinates holding tea said in disbelief and uncertainty. No, I don't think so, but I don't doubt his determination. This young man, in any case, is not an existence that you and others can guess. Even I may be far from being able to compare with him. Summer insects can't talk about ice, interesting. When the Generalissimo said this, he spoke with obvious contempt for Jia Yan. He was not unhappy at all. He just stared at the sky with an expression that was neither arrogant nor impetuous. His eyes seemed to no longer look at the departing young man. As if through endless time and space, I saw another young man who resolutely embarked on the road to become stronger in order not to be bullied for his motherland. It's just that time flies by and the determination is still there, but the young man is no longer the young man here. I just hope you don't become the young man you were back then. He shook his head slowly and sighed. The subordinate was beside him, but he was completely confused. Call. That young man? Haha, what is that young man? A person who has just been born in the new world, and he still wants to give me advice in such an old-fashioned way. I am really speechless. Jia Yan is flying in the air. At his level, unless he doesn't want to listen, the affairs in the base camp that he just left dozens of kilometers behind are like ears to him, and he can hear everything he says. So he almost burst out laughing. I am an old man who is over 100 years old. Is he still a teenager? What a joke. I would like to be a young man, but unfortunately, no matter how strong I am, I can't overcome things like time. This is the avenue of the universe, and it is also the foundation. Maybe no matter how strong and terrifying I am, I can't break through the law of time. Jia Yan also realized something. During the flight, he looked into the distance, shook his head and sighed. As a living thing, even if a strong person wants to be immortal, it is impossible. At least for such a long time in the Milky Way, I have not heard of any earth-shattering strong person who can be immortal. Jia Yan only thinks that he is not that big. Characteristics, there will be no exceptions. Time is something that really passes by. He is a boy. Unless Jia Yan breaks the laws of the world one day, he can reverse time, return to his childhood, and feel what it's like to be a boy bar. It would be really convenient if it were like what was said in those novels. You could be reborn or go back to the past at will. But unfortunately, the iron laws of the universe cannot be broken so easily. Jia Yan did not look forward to AI, nor did he become dejected because of it. Instead, he became more determined to make progress. In this vast universe, he was already one of the top masters. As long as he continued to move forward, he might succeed. There are more gains, even if we don't talk about reversing time, just seeing more exciting scenery is quite interesting, isn't it? The flying figure and speed were even more impressive, breaking through 5,000 kilometers per hour with lightning, and soon reached the sky above a tense war zone. This is a battlefield where soldiers from both sides fight fiercely. Between the Xinhe Kingdom and the Xinbei Kingdom, the two sides, one black and one white, are like a yin-yang Tai Chi diagram, with clear distinctions. They each occupy fortresses and trenches, hoping to fight the enemy to the death. In fact, the two sides have been in this explosive state for a long time. Although small conflicts occasionally broke out, they did not break out into a huge direct war. This situation has been maintained for decades. Because everyone on both sides knows that the frontal central battlefield is their final limit. If a war breaks out, it means that the final decisive battle is about to begin. No one was prepared, so they didn't act rashly. If Jia Yan doesn't come, I'm afraid this situation will continue until one of the two sides surpasses the other in terms of national power, or one of the two sides emerges a terrifying and powerful man who is indomitable. In the camps of both sides, there are a lot of masters, and many powerful men with thunderous ears are guarding here. Both sides have balanced forces to maintain the balance here, which means that a large number of strong men on both sides are concentrated here. As a result, the energy here has been surging in the sky, suppressing it so much that ordinary soldiers dare not move at all. And behind the trenches, precisely because the two sides have not charged directly into the enemy's regional war for a long time, behind their respective areas, just separated by the trenches, there may be a bustling soldier residential area, although it may not look like a city. It looks like a crowded place, but it is definitely like a small market. From time to time, soldiers come here to shop and vent their pressure on the front line. In some places, small villages have even formed, and many nearby villagers and businessmen gather here, becoming a prosperous place for trading. In this trading area, the largest and most luxurious one is where the front-line commanders from the two countries gather. The area where the commanders live in Xinhe Kingdom is already brightly lit. At dusk, there are a large number of soldiers shopping in shops in the city-like rear area, and there are even places where people can buy wine and get drunk. As long as there are no combat missions for a few days, and there are no duty requirements, so the superiors will allow you to come and get drunk. Soldiers also need to indulge. What? A so-called deputy marshal is here to control us? When did our country have the position of deputy marshal? This. Is it coming soon? It's too soon. What a deputy marshal. In a well-known red light place, among several non-commissioned officers surrounded by warblers, there was a middle-aged man who suddenly stood upright with a heavy back, causing the two women with heavy makeup beside him to be pushed aside. Go and make a coquettish hum. What's wrong, Deputy Commander? When the middle-aged man put down the phone in his hand, several attendants beside him asked in surprise. They said that a deputy marshal came to our central front line. Huh, some deputy marshal suddenly came. And I had never heard of it before. I went to find out why a deputy marshal suddenly came. I hope no one else will lie to me, otherwise. The middle-aged man snorted coldly. He was not furious, but there was a faint glint in his eyes. I'm afraid he had many fights and blood-stained hands. However, a person who can reach the position of deputy commander, although he has the courage of a soldier, is definitely not lacking in an all-round mentality, so he took out the phone again, hung up the phone to a few good friends in the rear area and left. Huh? Is this so-called deputy marshal appointed by the Grand Marshal himself? Moreover, this is the first time for the Grand Marshal himself to see this so-called deputy marshal, and no one knows the true identity of this deputy marshal. He just looks like a child. The Generalissimo is so confused. The deputy commander looked ugly and almost wanted to break the phone in his hand into two pieces. As the deputy commander, he is definitely not too young. Although he cannot compare with the Generalissimo, he is still over 200 years old. He has been in the army for a long time. Today only then did he take the position of deputy commander. They didn't even get to be a military commander, let alone a deputy marshal. Although they believed that the Black Country had never had the position of deputy marshal, just hearing this name, they knew it must be related to the word marshal. If possible, if so, he would like to exchange his position as deputy commander for the so-called position of deputy marshal, even if he has no real power. So when he suddenly heard that someone was the so-called deputy marshal, and he was still a young man, he felt angry in his heart. Come to our central front line? Is he a nobleman who comes here to make money? Huh, no matter who he is, after all, if he comes to this front line, that's all. But if he comes here and wants to point fingers, I won't do it. The one who sells the account. The middle-aged man hung up the phone, and then said to the soldiers below him, come on, let's go back. They said that this guy was coming soon. I wanted to go over and wait to see who he was. As soon as he appeared, so he asked the Generalissimo to appoint a so-called deputy marshal to do it for him. No, I'm already here. Just when he said the cruel words, a contented and understated voice came from the sky. This voice was quite young, but the place where it appeared and the aura that even the commander didn't feel made everyone's expressions change, and they all looked up. The middle-aged man, the deputy commander, looked up and saw a young man flying in the air just 10 meters away from him, as if against gravity. This young man had an unattractive appearance. He looked like a junior high school student you could see on the roadside anytime and anywhere, but his unique eyes made him seem to stand out from the crowd, and his whole impression changed. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2554. When he looked at the young man, the deputy commander directly seemed to see a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. A large number of strong men were killed by the owner of the eyes with overwhelming force. A large number of powerful auras came overwhelmingly to cover his face, making him groan and take 2 steps back. Then he looked at the young man in the sky with a dazed complexion and a pale face. The people around him were also stunned. They didn't feel that much, because the young man coming from the sky didn't use any aura to oppress them, but they could feel that the atmosphere was different. The deputy commander who joined him again took a few steps back at this juncture. The answer is self-evident, that is, their commander, whose strength has reached the level second only to the Generalissimo. The master actually lost due to the fierce competition. Moreover, the young man in the sky was calm and composed throughout the whole process, as if he just glanced at their deputy commander, and then their deputy commander immediately lost his composure. This kind of immersive and terrifying pressure, are you the boy on the phone? You are indeed quite capable. The deputy commander pushed away several of his subordinates who were coming to help him, and then they also flew up. As a master in this world where many strong men can fly, he can naturally fly, and do so. Not bad. As a strong and upright man, he naturally would not bow his head under Jia Yan's terrifying power. Even though the momentum just now seemed a bit too strong for him, he still braved the situation and faced him head-on. After all, he was in front of his subordinates, so he was shameless. Oh? Do you still have the courage to come up and confront me? Courage is commendable. But this kind of ignorant thinking is your disadvantage. On the battlefield, you must have the ability to see through various situations. No wonder you can only become deputy commander. Jia Yan looked at the other party approaching with difficulty despite his own momentum, and said with a contented expression. Are you the child that the Grand Marshal mentioned just now? Huh, very good. It's just that at this age, you can cultivate energy pressure that makes me feel a little bit intolerable. But you are a bit too arrogant. As a teenager, you have to have teenagers. Don't you understand the human mind and respect for elders? The so-called deputy commander of the Central Front Army. His face was unhappy, and he flashed all kinds of dangerous eyes, as if he was looking for an opportunity to attack. As a person who has been on the front line for many years, fighting is already his instinct, even though, as Jia Yan said, he doesn't want to at all. He has the qualities of a good commander, but at least in terms of combat and bravery, he cannot be questioned by others. Respect your elders. Then please tell me, Your Excellency, do you, a person who has no superior authority and even leads his subordinates to live and drink in the war zone, look like an elder? In addition, I am your vanguard commander, and it is mine to control my subordinates. Responsibility, so not only will I not respect you, I will also kick out those who do not follow the rules from my subordinates. Do you understand me? Jia Yan snorted sarcastically. He despised the most shameless guy who thought he was powerful and thought he could do anything. As the deputy commander of the First Army, he relied on his ability and ignored the wartime regulations. He led a group of subordinates to get drunk in the shopping street of the war zone. What if the enemy found an opportunity and launched a thunderous strike? Wouldn't that drag down the entire army? Therefore, he would not want such a soldier. Want to be the subordinate of the dignified Jia Yan? Even in this kind of adventure, he wouldn't want it? Humph, the Generalissimo is so confused. I gave you a so-called deputy marshal position that was not available to you. Do you really think that you are the superior officer? Not to mention that your position has not yet been approved by the higher UPS in the country. Even if it is approved by the higher UPS, it's too early to take care of me. When the deputy commander heard this, he became furious due to the drunkenness, and his eyes flashed with a ruthless look. He clenched his fists and struck Jia Yan with a powerful blow. This move was unexpected, causing all the subordinates below to change their expressions upon hearing this. You must know that even though the young man flying above is young, being able to fly is the sign of a strong man, and if he is really the so-called deputy marshal according to intelligence, then this move is like attacking a superior, which is a serious crime in the military. But the deputy commander who punched was not afraid at all. He believed that he would not be weaker than the young man. Even if the young man's energy seemed to be stronger than his, he was an authentic fighting strongman who had crawled through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. No matter how weak he was, in reality, it is absolutely impossible to be weaker than a child in combat power. And more importantly, the so-called deputy marshal position of this young man is just a verbal promise from the Generalissimo himself. Although the Generalissimo has spoken, the country will probably give him face, but the official appointment has not yet been made. Issue it? Since there was no order, then it was his fault that this young man broke into the front line of an important military town and started fighting with his deputy commander. If he directly bombed the young man to death, there would be no proof of his death in the future. With such combat power, he would at most be reduced. Losing a little bit of nominal power will have no impact at all. This was his deliberate decision to take advantage of his drinking power. Humph, for the following crime, this crime is enough to make you go to jail. However, I am a kind person and I will show mercy today so that you don't have to go to jail. You can just die. Jia Yan looked at the man's fist calmly and waited until the fist was about to fall on him before he acted belatedly. But the speed of this action was like lightning and thunder, reaching the limit. Arriving last, he grasped the opponent's attacking fist, and felt a strange force that only belonged to this world in his palm. The so-called fighting spirit power? No matter how strange it is, it's just borrowing the power given by me and the white dolphin creature. Jia Yan felt it for a while, and then he grasped it with his palms. Hearing the subtle sound of cracking bones, the man groaned involuntarily, and then his eyes became frightened. He had known that the young man in front of him was probably stronger than him in energy, so he used 100% of his strength. Anyway, even if he broke the house below, he would not be held accountable, so he was unscrupulous. But after this punch passed, it was held firmly in the palm of the opponent's hand as if he had foresight. He didn't even see the boy's movements clearly. This shows that the gap between the two sides is really too big. It is so big that the young man in front of me may exceed the level of the first echelon of his country. You must know that the Generalissimo belongs to the first echelon of Xinhai Kingdom. I have competed with the Generalissimo, and I have never felt such an alarming difference. Sir, This man still had the ability to adapt to the situation, but now that he was frightened, he quickly wanted to beg for mercy. But how could Jia Yan tolerate any more words from him? While he was still in shock, the words just blurted out. Before he could say a few words, the slap from the other hand was silent, as if it had been waiting for the deputy commander's cheek. Snapped. A sound as thin as a mosquito's nagging was made lightly in the air. If you don't listen carefully, you won't be able to hear this kind of sound clearly. In this kind of super powerful battle where everything will break down at every turn, almost no one will care. But if someone else launches such an attack, it will naturally have no effect at all. But if the attacker is Jia Yan, then such a seemingly non-threatening attack. Just fatal. Click. The head of the deputy commander rotated 360 degrees in the air like a broken twig. His whole body turned into a twist, his head was broken, and his body was rolled up. The power of the slap was so terrifying. Puff. Then, before he could express his despair, his face slowly fell from the sky and landed at the feet of his subordinates. The originally aloof deputy commander, one of the high-end combat forces of the entire Xinhe kingdom, today, beside this romantic street, there were corpses. The deputy commander blatantly violated military discipline and dared to attack the deputy marshal appointed by me, the generalissimo. I had no choice but to shoot him to death on the spot. Okay, collect the body, and then come to the command post to obey orders. In addition, this piece I don't allow this area to exist, so demolish it all within 2 days, otherwise don't blame me for being ruthless. Jia Yan made an above-board conclusion and then flew towards the command post without looking back. It's over, the deputy commander was actually killed. What do we do next? What else can we do? Now that this young man has become the supreme commander of the army, we can only listen to him. We can't be allowed to be deserters, right? Besides, the deputy commander is dead, and the things we did, I'm afraid no one else will know about it in the future. It seems that this young man is a selfless type, and he is so powerful. He can't do those things in the future. Hurry up and report to him. Be careful that if you go late, he will kill you again. Several subordinates shuddered. Their status was also high, but no matter how high they were, could they be higher than the deputy commander? Even the commander of the local army, who has a high status and strength, has now ended up as a corpse at their feet. If they dare to do anything disobeying orders, I am afraid that the fate of the deputy commander will be a lesson for them. What? The generalissimo personally appointed a deputy marshal? And this deputy marshal has already come to our central front line. Ah! The deputy commander has been killed by the deputy marshal? How, is it possible? He is coming. Oh, I just said it, deputy commander. He has done too many things against his will over the years. I have tried to persuade him a long time ago, but he refused to listen and ended up like this. Forget it, just kill him. I have also recently prepared his materials to apply for sanctions from above. Regarding the military commander's matter, the so-called deputy marshal killed the person directly to save me trouble. But it sounds like this deputy marshal came with bad intentions. I'd better stop fighting for power with him, otherwise I'm afraid he won't be any better than the deputy commander. Inside the command post, in the Grand Office, the commander of the entire Central Front Army, who was also the supreme commander, was dumbfounded when he heard the shocking changes today. Then he quickly restrained even the slightest thought of competing for power with the deputy marshal. The deputy commander was weaker than him, but not much weaker. Judging from the descriptions of the calls from his subordinates, he knew that the strength gap between himself and the so-called deputy marshal was not just a tiny bit, but a huge distance. So instead of committing suicide, it is better to be honest and obedient and have a good death. Just as the military commander thought of this, he heard the door to his office being rudely pushed open. Very good, you should be the commander. I am the deputy marshal of Nobue country. I am very satisfied with this office. You can go out. A young man looked at the rather luxurious military commander-level office furnishings around him in amazement, and then ordered the military commander to leave, as if his attitude was quite arrogant. Ah! The commander's arm holding the phone froze, and then like a chameleon, he immediately understood who the person coming was. He nodded and bowed. "Yes, Mr. Deputy Marshal, please take a seat." "No, you are definitely not used to sitting on my sofa, but please bear with me today. I will go and get a new one for you. I will go next door right away since I work in an office. It's also convenient for you to call me directly if you need anything. Please sit down." His attitude was quite low profile, and his expression towards Jia Yan was not as unruly as that of a deputy army commander. If he hadn't said it, no one would have thought of it, until just now, he was still the powerful commander of an army. In this area, he had more than 10,000 people. Tisk tisk, that's a good attitude. I thought something bad was about to happen. I didn't expect you to be much smarter than the so-called deputy commander. You are worthy of being a commander. Thank you for the compliment, Deputy Marshal. I'm going out now. The Deputy Marshal has come all the way, so he must be tired. I'll ask someone to bring some food, and I'll wait in the office next to him anytime and anywhere for the Deputy Marshal to come and deliver the order. I will definitely work hard under the Deputy Marshal in the future and strive for the approval of the Deputy Marshal. This military commander is like a completely loyal servant. Logically speaking, a person who is greedy for life and afraid of death cannot be a military commander, but he still behaves in such a state, like a licking dog. Okay, you go out and I'll take a rest. In addition, you go and prepare. Now that I'm here, I will start attacking the enemy on the opposite side tomorrow. My purpose is to disintegrate the enemy's line within a few days, and the army invaded Xinbei Kingdom. Do you understand what I mean? Go and observe several routes. Why don't you use so many? Jia Yan's words shocked the army commander, and then he looked at Jia Yan with some surprise. Then when he met Jia Yan's eyes, he quickly lowered his head, as if he was listening to the instructions. But deep in his heart, there was an overwhelming surge of emotion. You must know that he is a military commander who has been in charge of this position for more than 10 or 20 years. Because of this position, he knows the size and strength of the enemy best. If he were to sit here and form a frontal and evenly matched battlefield with the enemy, he would be sure of it, but he thought it would be quite difficult for him to gain even an inch of territory and advantage. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2555. It is difficult to even settle the battle lines quickly, let alone defeat the enemy in a few days, and even push back into the enemy's country. This is simply a waste of time. If this deputy marshal has the kind of strength that is shown on the phone, I am afraid that with his help, it is still possible to win some small-scale wars on this battlefield, but if you want to invade the enemy's hometown, or even enter them, I think it is very difficult to say this inside the country, but I can't say this now. This is obviously the kind of child who has just gained strength and is on the rise. If I dare to talk nonsense, I am afraid that the deputy commander will my fate. The military commander left the office where Jia Yan was located, and his expression immediately changed into a calm one. For superiors like them, they already know how to observe faces and colors. Being strong is one thing, but knowing how to advance and retreat is the biggest secret to being a military commander. Jia Yan didn't care about this wise commander or not, but he just needed to know that he wouldn't be held back by this commander. I'm afraid that until now, no one is willing to believe that I can quickly resolve this front, right? Haha, in the next few days, we will let them take a good look at the capabilities of the strongest command level from the starry sky. Jia Yan doesn't think that everything can be solved with his own force value. The solution with force value is simple, and even conquering the entire planet, or even all the planets, is nothing. But what happens after this? His purpose in coming to this part of the world is not as simple as stirring up trouble here, but to seize this place, and the bigger purpose is to use the power of the white dolphin to devour it and turn it into nourishment for his own improvement. In other words, the whole world is just an arena between him and the white dolphin. If he uses his body power too much, the white dolphin will definitely notice his whereabouts. In a world where others dominate, Jia Yan may have no choice but to escape in embarrassment, or even die directly here. Therefore, Jia Yan cannot solve everything with his own force value. As for my commanding ability, don't underestimate me. After all, I am someone who has commanded countless real battles. In Beostar, my commanding ability is regarded as a trump card. Jia Yan just didn't want to use his head, but when it came time to use it, he was completely unambiguous. You stand still, right, in this formation, what? Look at me and don't want to believe me? I am a dignified deputy marshal. You will fight with me in this formation later. Don't worry, I am behind you, don't you? Someone will die. Boom boom. The next day, amidst the deafening sound of artillery shells, a small force of more than 1,000 people was rushed to the battlefront by Jia Yanqiang. Under the eager gaze of the enemy, Jia Yan followed them and attacked them temporarily. The announced battle formation advanced. Although this world already has a history simulated in the computer, including many wars and battles, even if it has past combat experience, it cannot be compared with the many years of combat experience of the huge population in the galaxy, right? Not to mention, the history of this world is fictional, and there are definitely slight differences between computer simulations and reality, and these gaps will lead to the direction of war. Death, death, death. I have never heard of such a formation. Is this deputy marshal forcing us to die? How do I know? In short, we just follow the instructions. When we get to the front line, no one thinks about death. The intrigues above are enough to affect our life or death. What a shame. I joined the army because I admired the Generalissimo. Why should I die in such a meaningless battle? 1,000 men may seem like a lot, but when placed on a battlefield where 300,000 troops are facing each other, it is like a drop in the bucket of water, which cannot even make a splash when it hits the enemy's lines. But when they broke through to the enemy's flank formation, they were very surprised to find that the casualties along their route were very small or even negligible, because if there was a possibility of death, the bullets and strong energy fired by the enemy will be blocked by a barrier that suddenly appears. Is this a magical defense imposed on us by the deputy marshal? So strong. The deputy marshal was able to protect more than 1,000 of us. No wonder he has confidence in us. It turns out there is such a magic shield. But the way he taught us to move is also very strange. It seems that the way he attacks us becomes easier to break through. The members of the marching army all showed expressions of sudden realization. Protected by the deputy marshal's magic barrier and relying on his unique new way of marching, this small force of 1,000 men broke into the enemy's trench without sacrificing a single person. Kill. When they rushed into the trenches, this 1,000-man troop, under the panicked gaze of the enemy, poured bullets, magic, cultivators' flying swords, and all kinds of combat skills into the trenches. Both sides of the battle line, which was originally quite peaceful and balanced, were slightly shocked by the sudden imbalance in the battle. Then, news and signals like snowflakes flew out in all directions. After all, this front has existed for hundreds of years. Although during these 100 years, the front has been a tug of war. From time to time, enemy troops will occupy one's side, and then one's own troops will sneak attack and occupy part of the enemy's area. But in the past 10 years, similar results are rarely seen. What's more, it was only a 1,000-man army that achieved the result of this great battle. For the two countries that had been balancing for a long time, this was like a bolt from the blue, shaking people out of their minds. What? He really did it? When he asked me to give him a team of 1,000 people, I thought he would throw these 1,000 people into a trap, but I didn't expect it to succeed. In the headquarters far behind the front line, The commander was stunned, and then there was a little expectation and disbelief in his heart. In the rear of the front line troops farther away from the central front, the generalissimo also quickly received the information, and then he didn't have much sense of shock, because that magical young man was able to do such a thing. To him, it seemed like it had been expected. Haha, have we started? If this kid can even do this, I will be a little disappointed. Now let me see how far you can go. Can you finish this front in a few days? The general marshal also had expectations in his heart, but unlike the military commander's mixed emotions, he, who had been here for hundreds of years, simply wanted Jia Yan to fulfill his promise and settle the war in this area. For him, it was a little bit of a breather. It's good. With such a military exploit, I can apply for the official title of Generalissimo on his behalf, which will be much smoother. You know, there are still a few people who look down on me. Boom boom boom. The battle on the front line, after these 1,000 troops disrupted the battle situation, became completely chaotic, unlike the fairly balanced battle situation of the previous day. Damn it, why are the enemies attacking like this? Our artillery fire will be scattered by them. On the artillery unit side, there were many strong men under the protection of cultivation formations, fighting hard against a large number of artillery shells, and almost being counterattacked by the enemy's artillery fire, which destroyed all the positions. Artillery position, follow my orders. Suddenly, a young boy's voice sounded like a bell from above his head. The commander of the artillery battalion looked at the heights, and then his expression changed slightly. Today, a photo of the young man above his head was urgently conveyed from the army commander. It was said that he would be the future deputy marshal of the front-line army, with a higher position than his army commander, and the army commander strongly requested that all troops see him. When this young man is young, he must obey his orders, otherwise he will be punished by military law. So after seeing the young man's figure, the battalion commander immediately looked grim. He thought that the young man was probably going to mess up the artillery position. Although he had just seen that the front-line troops suddenly had a slight advantage because the surprise force commanded by the young deputy marshal took effect, he did not think that he could also make a difference in the artillery position on his side. After all, artillery is a very professional branch. The angle of artillery shells, attack timing, positioning and evacuation, etc., all require a lot of experience and knowledge. It is not just a teenager who can command a good branch with a little luck. He didn't want the boy to interfere in their fight, but it was obvious that this wish failed. Angle southwest 127 degrees elevation, cultivator flying sword 27 degrees flat fire, bring no 07 high potential ammunition, give me a salvo. Jia Yanfei came to the artillery camp and loudly ordered the preparations for the battle. You know, the combat status of artillery in this world is not low. Naturally, he will not give up the command here. If it is used well, it will be a big killer. All the artillerymen, whether they were magicians, cultivators, or the gunners controlling ordinary forts, all turned their attention to their battalion commander at this moment. Listen, obey the command from the vanguard, hurry up. The battalion commander also heard about the young deputy marshal yesterday. Knowing that the deputy marshal had just arrived yesterday, he quickly killed all the deputy commanders of his army. Maybe his little battalion commander dared to disobey orders. Will end up in the same end. He is not that great. He disobeys orders for the sake of victory, so he is quite sensible and makes his subordinates obey orders. Call out. Call out. The first thing to fly away were the cultivators' swords. These flying swords were controlled by them and had specific explosives tied to them. Then when they came over the enemy's sky, the explosives were dropped and exploded. But it is a pity that the enemy has already had a strategy to deal with this kind of attack. Above their heads, the cultivator's spiritual power array also lights up, and the power of the explosives is completely blocked by the air. My Lord Deputy Marshal, This is just a waste of ammunition. The battalion commander looked ugly and finally made his accusation to Jia Yan. Don't worry, this is just consumption, release it at an angle of 189. Jia Yan was calm and composed, ignoring the battalion commander's pleading, and directly issued another order. The artillerymen all whispered for a while, and then looked at the deputy marshal with bright eyes, who seemed to be looking for anyone who dared to disobey his orders and wanted to kill them as a warning. They did not dare to say anything for a while, and hurriedly followed him. Manage. Although this young man's strength may not be that strong based on his appearance, the fact that he can fly and killed the deputy commander yesterday has been spread throughout the army today. For them, it is still a problem. Quite a deterrent, so they could only flatter Jia Yan's orders. A continuous barrage of artillery fire filled the outside of the specific enemy camp, but they were all blocked. But what surprised everyone was that under the last shell of artillery fire, the enemy's indestructible formation was directly blown into pieces. What? The battalion commander's expression changed and he didn't know what was going on. They also use this kind of large formation, so they know that even if they use 10 times more attack power, they can't be blown up by such a small amount of firepower. But what happened today? They listened to the deputy marshal boy's words and poured the ammunition into specific parts, and the formation was destroyed. Go on, their turtle shells have been destroyed. I don't need to tell you how to blow them up. I have to go somewhere else. Jia Yan continued speaking calmly, as if the current scene had already been grasped by him and he had seen it in advance. The battalion commander and others, as if looking at some monster, watched the young man fly away from the artillery battalion position where they and others were, and then looked at each other in confusion. It turns out that they are not abusing their power at all, but they really have real materials. It's a shame that they didn't believe what this young man said just now. Hurry up, blast their turtle shells with great effort. If you don't seize the opportunity to annihilate these bastards, are you still waiting for them to kill us in turn? Oh. Under the urging of the battalion commander, the soldiers moved quickly, but looked at Jia Yan flying to other places in the sky, showing a sense of uncertainty. What? There seems to be some expert guidance from the enemy side, and they have beaten several of our positions to pieces. No, our situation is quite dangerous now. If a few more positions are destroyed, the enemy may launch a general attack, which will shake the front line. What kind of resourceful person has such commanding ability? But no matter how strong the commanding ability is, if the number of strong people is not overwhelmingly stronger than ours, it is useless. It is our turn. A group of strong men, inside the Xinbei kingdom's position, looked at the battle scene in the sky with frosty eyes. Although they were amazed at the enemy's commanding talent, they did not feel frightened at all. Because for them, they and others are the real pillars on this battlefield and the absolute anchor. As long as they don't die, this battlefield will be impregnable. These strong men have risen rapidly. Although they are confident in themselves and others, they are determined to fight to the death. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2556. Oh. Jia Yan is commanding a large army of cultivators in another place, asking them to look as much as he imagined, step on the flying sword, fly in the sky, and then use the so-called sword magic and spiritual power to kill the enemy. People, but as he was talking, he stopped talking. Because in the distance, there was a group of strong men from the enemy army, flying towards the sky, and aimed at the front-line troops of Xinbei Kingdom, crushing them directly. Did the strong one show up so early? This is not possible. Our advantage has not been fully established yet. Jia Yan was unhappy. He wanted this to go according to his script, but what were these strong men doing? Let yourself be slapped in the face? The consequences of his displeasure are quite terrifying. So many strong men in the galaxy have already verified this with their lives. Puff. Without thinking too much or hesitating, Jia Yan's figure moved in the original direction and rushed directly towards the direction where the enemies took off. And below, a large number of our soldiers, like artillery battalion commanders, were paying attention to the figure of this young man who was coming and going freely in the sky. When they saw him, they were unafraid and moved towards the enemy who had just ascended. Everyone gasped when a large-scale powerful force emerged from the sky. Is this so-called deputy marshal preparing for a straightforward king versus king? And there are still a group of kings who are enemies, so why should he be such a lonely king? He's a little too confident. Is that the so-called new deputy marshal of Nobue Kingdom? A little too young, but is he taking the initiative to approach us? I have to say, this is the young man's fault. Although he can fly, I'm afraid he won't be weak, but flying towards a group of us would be the most unwise move. This is definitely seeking death. Let's help him and let him die on our blades first. Then this war will end with the defeat of Nobue country. Although the enemies did not underestimate Jia Yan, they did not think that he would be a strong man who could survive the siege of a large number of strong men. Moreover, it is obvious that the deputy marshal was behind this sudden attack by Shinkoku. If you want to settle this battle, you must kill the culprit, no matter whether he is just a child or not. On the battlefield, there were not a few young people from the Zinbei Kingdom killed by the Zinbei Kingdom. Of course, it was the same in the past. The number of young people from the Zinbei Kingdom killed by the Zinbei Kingdom soldiers was definitely not a small number. Originally, the two sides were about to come into contact, and no matter how strong they were, they would not foolishly run into a large group of enemies. The strong men of Zinbei Kingdom also thought so, and believed that Jia Yan would definitely pause and say some righteous words before preparing to contact. But I didn't expect that this young man was so bold that he didn't even say hello and ran directly into the group of more than 30 strong men flying up here. Boom! Without much hesitation, he punched the head of the strong man in front of him and smashed it into mud. The blood and water exploded, and the expressions of the other strong men around him changed drastically. They all started to tremble in fear when they saw such a shocking scene. You know, they have seen many dead people, but this is the first time they have seen a strong man who died so simply. And since the dead strong man dares to fly in the front row, it shows that he is confident in his own strength. In fact, he can definitely be ranked among the top 5 of this group of strong men flying over. Such a master couldn't even receive a single move and died under the young man's punch? How can it be? Unbelievable emotions are rippling deep in everyone's heart. But that wasn't what frightened them. What frightened them even more was that after Jia Yan killed the first strong man with one blow, he didn't seem to have to take a breath at all. He looked back and kicked out again, kicking the body of another strong man into the air. The shocking speed of kicking the legs and the overall coordination of the body brought about the most terrifying and shocking scenes on the entire battlefield. Impossible. One kick? One kick? Is this killing the strong? This is simply killing the weak. How strong is this young deputy marshal? Why is there no mention of such a young man in the intelligence we collected earlier? If we knew his strength, we wouldn't have done this. Keep the distance. Don't worry. No matter how strong he is only one person at best. What can he do alone? Dozens of enemy warriors, after Jia Yan launched 2 earth-shattering bombing attacks, flew backwards and quickly made a decisive strategic plan. After all, they were all warriors no matter what. The strategy they made was also the most appropriate one in a panic. Really? Do you think that distance will be useful? Jia Yan was in the air, looking coldly at the group of strong men who were far away from him, then smiled lazily, and said to the group of strong men flying up from his own troops further away, "You don't have to come to support, do this, just mind your own business and leave these people to me." Jia Yan naturally does not need support. In fact, he is still trying hard to control his energy, for fear that he will accidentally attract the power of his body, shatter the land, and then provoke the white dolphins and others. So let alone asking for help, even if the entire enemy army of hundreds of thousands of people attacked him at the moment, he would be able to annihilate the entire army of hundreds of thousands of people without using too much force. The strong men on our side who originally wanted to reinforce heard Jia Yan's voice, like a boy's voice suddenly ringing in their ears, and there was a sound like a loud bell ringing, which made them dizzy. Involuntarily, I stopped taking off, but just like Jia Yan said, I stayed in my position and did my job well. Let us see what the deputy marshal looks like in battle, right? Speaking of which, if he can even defeat the siege of dozens of enemy troops, then he is probably not far behind the Grand Marshal himself. Looking at his confident appearance, I'm afraid he really has this kind of ability. No wonder the Generalissimo promoted him and made him the so-called Deputy Marshal. No one is really worried about this so-called Deputy Marshal who has just arrived. To put it bluntly, he is just an outsider who has landed in the air. No one thinks that it will be any different from before if he dies. If he does not die but wins, he will. It made the officers of the Black Country feel a little strange. After all, the addition of such a strong man on this originally anxious front line, doesn't it mean that there may be variables on the front line, and they are variables that are good for them to believe in the Black Country? Of course, no one knows whether it is a blessing or a curse to be involved in something so far away. In short, the current battle is definitely the most eye-catching place on the entire battlefield. Originally, I thought that after Jia Yan's powerful attack that shocked the opponent's troops with the first blow, and gave the opponent's troops a show of strength, the momentum of the strongest attack would be slowed down. After all, not everyone can maintain the strongest state. Therefore, he should become a little weaker after two powerful strikes like showing off himself. But no one dared to imagine that after Jia Yan used these two attacks and killed the two strong men at the front of the enemy's army, he seemed to have no strength at all. He stepped forward again and pulled out the sword from behind. The hanging rapier of the commanding state. This kind of thin sword is usually used by commanders for ceremonial purposes. It just looks good. It does not have the unique effects of a magician's wand or a cultivator's magic weapon long sword. Even in terms of toughness, it is not as tough as an ordinary sword. The weapons are very different. But just like this vase-like weapon, in Jia Yan's hand, it was like a real ancient artifact. A flower was thrown out of his hand, and then it hit a flower that left his side. A man's body, and before it could be split in two, he rushed behind another figure. In the exclamation of the figure's owner, he calmly lowered his sword. Pyridine! Pyridine! Two sounds came one after another, causing everyone around to change their expressions. At the same time, their eyes looked at the young man's movements, like after images, quickly sweeping past two shadows, and then there was a shadow in the air. There are two more corpses. Tisk, tisk, the sword is so useful. Jia Yan looked at the weapon in his hand and sighed a little. He is a giant mosquito and has never used any weapons in his life. In fact, long ago, I regretted that I couldn't be like the heroes or time travelers in novels on Earth, using swords and other weapons to fight fiercely. Now I didn't expect that time had passed and he realized his wish in this way. It really feels different, quite a bit heroic. Devil! Beside Jia Yan, another man finally picked up his weapon, a knife with a machine gun. This can be said to be a knife, but it also has the shadow of a firearm, and it can also shoot. It can be said to be a unique weapon for powerful people in this world. The combination of technology and weapons is unique. Snap, snap, snap. Bullets poured out like a barrage. Jia Yan's body flashed, and he took mysterious steps in the air one after another, and came to the side of the shooting man. He raised the sword edge, and his brainwave power surged on the sword, making the seemingly extremely thin sword, turned into an invincible sword. After the chop, the man and the foul weapon in his hand were reduced to two halves. It's too weak, but this weapon is quite interesting. A firearm combined with a cold weapon? Although there are such designs on the earth, in the hands of strong people, this is the first time I have seen such a design. Of course, on other planets when it comes to power, existences of this level are really too weak, so weak that I have never had much contact with them, so I'm afraid there are some from the outside world. Jia Yan felt the fallen weapon, and with a wave of his hand, the weapon that was broken into two parts healed automatically, and then flew into his hand. Humph, now it's my weapon. This method is quite unpredictable to outsiders, but to Jia Yan, it is just a use of brainwave power. Under the combination of his power, unless it is a very strong external star metal, otherwise ordinary metal will be reconnected with a little force, which is no worse than the forged one. Da. After Jia Yan joined, even the appearance of the firearms and weapons changed, turning into swords, and the bullets were not the same as before, but directly turned into the pointed bullets he liked. Although this is not scientific, but in his eyes what is science in the eyes of such a strong man? To a certain extent, he himself is science. Therefore, the bullets he fired quickly exceeded the speed of sound in this world, and more than that, it was probably 5 or 6 times the speed of sound, and even the strong men at the moment could not react. Ah! Puff! Pi! The retreating strong men around them didn't expect that Jia Yan was still playing tricks, so they directly picked up the gun, and the gun seemed to be in his hand, much stronger than when the strong man just held it in his hand. Directly it sprayed out a terrifying weapon that even they couldn't resist. It was too late to block them, and a dozen strong men were turned into broken corpses by the barrage and fell to the ground. I. A strong man who barely managed to stand upright in the air after being injured, holding his sword in one hand, looked at the so-called deputy marshal of Xinhe Kingdom. His face had lost all color. All that was left was intense fear. The remaining strong men, some of whom were lucky enough to be uninjured, no longer had the will to fight at this time, watching the young man's figure retreat violently. There is a monster in the Black Kingdom. It's over. We believe that the White Kingdom is over. If this young man and the powerful men behind them take action together, we believe that the masters of the White Kingdom will definitely not be able to compete with each other, and the country will be doomed. Don't forget, he is just a young man. If he grows up in the future, he may have more than this strength. We can't fight, and we can't even stay in our country. With this young man here, maybe Xinhe Kingdom will be destroyed within 10 years and Xinbei Kingdom will be destroyed. This country will definitely be hopeless. Among this group of strong men, a few were quick thinking and made a decision in an instant to withdraw from the battlefield and then fly away. Because with the trust of such a terrifying young man, the Black Country might defeat them within 10 years. The motherland believes that the Bai Kingdom will be destroyed. However, they obviously still underestimated the ambition of the young man in front of them. Within 10 years? You are overthinking it. Let alone 10 years, if it is delayed for a month, Jia Yan will feel that he has not done a good job and will be angry with himself. It is a pity that none of the strong men at the scene can see that time. Ta. Jia Yan transformed into a sharpshooter. After adapting to the recoil of the firearm, he suddenly stabilized the firearm. As a result, the group of strong men in front of him could not even carry out a decent siege, just like that. 2 of them, all perished in Jia Yan's hands. Call. After killing the last strong man, Jia Yan calmly blew the barrel of the gun which was hot and emitted white smoke. Hey, let's call it a day. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2557. Jia Yan didn't have any pretentious or unruly attitude. It was as if the top warrior who had killed so many enemies had simply done something effortless. The other enemy troops down there, forget it, I don't have any confidence in them either. Let others come and get some military merit. Jia Yan sensed the enemy army below that was beginning to collapse, shook his head, and flew back to the rear of the battle line. It was just like what he said just now, it was time to call it a day. Hey, it's easy to clock in and clock out at work. I want to take over this planet within a year. Isn't it a bit unkind to evade my responsibilities like this? Whatever, in this world, I can play however I want, Jia Yan showed his prowess on the battlefield, but then he seemed to be bored, allowing the battle below to continue as usual, and hid back in the rear. Regarding this incident, some people said that after his great power, his strength was also affected and he had to rest. Some people saw the essence of the matter, that is, they felt that this young master was lazy and did not want to waste so much energy. Others are more vicious, saying that Jia Yan should be a great master from some other country, disguised as a young man, and his deception can only last so long. When the time is up, just like Cinderella's magic, he must return to the bunker. Otherwise the secret will be exposed. They said theirs, Jia Yan didn't care so much. Is it necessary to listen to what the weak say and make yourself feel uncomfortable? He just needs to follow his own pace and move forward step by step. Yes, Senior Marshal, I have achieved the first victory in this war zone. By the way, I am going to continue the attack tomorrow. I want you to continue to support me with troops and penetrate this front within 3 days. You won't refuse, right? What? I'm going to issue a military order? I'm going to do it immediately. Is it possible for an individual to create something like a military order? Jia Yan calmly communicated with the front line and rear areas over the phone, and quite surprisingly, he did not even go to the rear areas in person to request. The old man, the Generalissimo, actually agreed to his request and was willing to provide military support, allowing him to quickly settle this front that has been at odds for hundreds of years. And Jia Yan, who had the command arrow, did not use chicken feathers as the command arrow, but directly issued the transfer appointment as if he had a real imperial edict. This appointment and planning directly took into account the entire surrounding front, and even the legion where the Grand Marshal himself was included in his calculations. Fighting on a mere front line is naturally not what Jia Yan wants. The purpose of his calculations and transfers this time is to prepare for the next war. Anyone who is careful about all the arrangements can see that he is vaguely aiming at it. The whole territory of Xinbei Kingdom. If possible, he was not going to ask for additional troops from the so-called Shinkuro Kingdom, but would only use the partial division troops that the Generalissimo could dispatch. Otherwise, once the matter involves other troops in Xinbei Kingdom, he will have to fight, which will be quite detrimental to his progress. Instead of doing this, it is better to use troops that can be easily dispatched to do the first eye-catching thing. It will be much more convenient if we want to mobilize the whole country in the future. The next day, the so-called Deputy Marshal of the Xinyi Kingdom, who many people thought was too exhausted and had to disappear, actually appeared on the battlefield again, and he appeared on the battlefield without any loss at all. Continue to exert his light and heat. The troops in the entire rear area also rushed to support, some of them using quite technological transfer methods. Especially certain light cavalry units, such as the paladin troops riding tall horses, the cultivation troops who were the first to arrive with flying swords, and the wind magician troops. It's quite fast. Although the number is small, all of them are elite. Jia Yan did not let them rest too much, and directly ordered the strong men to turn into spearhead troops and quickly attack the enemy's camp. But he used a little more strength to kill again the ones who had already been killed by him. Kill all the powerful enemy front line officials. If this war is a replica of yesterday, it would be a bit too praising the other party. You must know that although the war fought yesterday was not at the level where both sides received reinforcements today, the problem is that today's battle was not as intense as yesterday. It can be said that the troops of Xinbei Kingdom collapsed at the first touch, but at least they held on better than yesterday. Small moments make all the difference. The key point is not that Jia Yan has slightly increased the intensity of his actions today, but that the trust in him from the entire Central Front army is no longer a thing of the past, but has become completely unconditional trust. Some bosses only need one battle to establish their status, and Jia Yan obviously falls into this category. Because no matter in terms of his own strength, his grasp of the overall situation on the entire battlefield, or his guidance and command of key units, Jia Yan has revealed that he is far beyond the level of a commander on this planet, especially for some advanced ones. The concept can be understood with just a few clicks, making the non-commissioned officers on the battlefield say they are experts. Who wouldn't trust such a powerful commander? So today everyone is united, and when the war starts, it will be completely different from yesterday, and it will have overwhelming momentum. And no matter how well Jia Yan commanded, it was not surprising that the enemy showed signs of being one-sided. On this day, the second day after Jia Yan arrived at the front-line troops, under his legendary command method, the border troops of the Xinbei Kingdom, which were still impregnable and had no problem confronting the Xinhe Kingdom for hundreds of years, were immediately collapsed. The main force of 100,000 people on the Central Front turned into a small deserting front line that collapsed in 2 days, fighting on their own. As expected, it only took a short period of pursuit to defeat them. The troops were wiped out. As soon as this battle broke out, the whole country was shocked. Everything goes too fast. The major TV stations in the Xinhe Kingdom, which had not paid much attention to the border battle here, suddenly received news of the victory here today, and it was a great victory that had not been seen in a century. Everyone, including reporters and anchors, were all buzzing. After all, this border with the Xinbei Kingdom has been fought for hundreds of years, and the fighting has been so incessant that reporters no longer bother to report on the fighting here. Although they had already received intelligence that this war might be different from the past, upon closer inspection, they found that in this war, a young man from their side had joined the battle, and the organization of the entire army, as well as the personnel, there are almost no major changes in the schedule. In other words, if there is any abnormality, it is just because of the appearance of this young man. For the big guys, this is simply impossible. In a life and death battlefield that has lasted for hundreds of years, there are dozens of millions of soldiers on the battlefield. If a huge change occurs because of one person, is it still called a war? So they didn't care at all. There were even few media reports on yesterday's small victory. But today, there was an incredible latest development. That is, with yesterday's victory, today's Deputy Marshal Boy suddenly transformed the battlefield into a comprehensive victory. The troops on the Central Front defeated the enemy's strongest force of more than 100,000 men in just half a day, which directly established the entire victory of this front. If they were lucky, they might even defeat the Central Army. The troops on the front line advanced a few kilometers further into the hinterland of the enemy's border. This is a shocking victory. The entire country's media seemed to have taken some kind of medicine and went completely crazy. Regarding the so-called young deputy marshal, as well as the deputy marshal's life experience, plus his abilities, and his past, everything was going crazy and was pulled out by reporters. Jia Yan, 15 years old, was a recent graduate of a junior high school. His performance had been mediocre before, neither lagging behind nor outstanding. But during the graduation exam, he showed amazing abilities, and then became like a legend himself. It only took a few days to transform into the deputy marshal of Xinhe Kingdom, and in a short period of time, he achieved such unparalleled achievements. After investigating the information, not to mention the audience, even the reporter himself was stunned, as if he was stunned by Jia Yan's ordinary life experience. They also want to find out that Jia Yan may be a member of a hidden family, or think that Jia Yan has a sect behind him, or that he has obtained some kind of heavenly material and earthly treasure, and then the whole person seems to have changed. But after the investigation, to the great disappointment of all reporters and media, every doubt was not verified. A hidden family? When the interviewers found Jia Yan's family and interviewed Jia Sheng at his workplace, the middle-aged man was even more stunned than they were, as if he just knew that the son who left 2 days ago was actually the real one. He became a soldier, and as soon as he became a soldier, he became the so-called deputy marshal of the army. In addition, Jia Yan's mother and his sister behaved similarly when they received Jia Yan's shocking news. They were as dumbfounded as if they had eaten xiang. How could this kind of family be a so-called hidden family? They are all ordinary people. There is no definite answer to whether Jia Yan is a disciple of a certain master, but he must not be, at least there is no evidence in the obtained information. Later, after many reporters, and even interested units and forces investigated whether Jia Yan became so powerful because of some secret treasure, the conclusions reached baffled them. Because Jia Yan has never revealed any information about his unique secret treasure. It's not this, it's not that. Could it be that Jia Yan still cultivated himself to be so strong? Even if he really cultivated himself to be so strong, what about his war command ability? What about the ability to control the troops? Many things here cannot be explained by just practicing. The mystery and magic of this young man soon gave all the media a news gimmick, quickly portraying Jia Yan as the latest patron saint of Xinhe Kingdom. The Jia family was confused about this, especially Jia Yan's sister Jia Lin. She was quickly regarded as a public figure in school, and people even pointed at her when she walked on the road. Jia Yan became famous, and so did his family. That's not all. He is famous in school, friends, etc., and the popularity about him instantly became the highest in the entire country. But it seems that Jia Yan doesn't want the people to stop. On the 3rd day after he arrived at the front line of the Central Army, most of the entire border troops, which Jia Yan had asked for action on the 1st day, were finally assembled. This time the troops were allocated into 3 front armies. Moreover, Jia Yan deliberately set up fuses in these 3 fronts, so that he could conveniently teleport back and forth in 3 directions. So, in the early morning of the 3rd day, Jia Yan, who thought time was running out, gave an order and the final decisive battle on the entire all-out front began. The people had not yet digested the news of yesterday's great victory. As a result, the media immediately released urgent news, saying that the front-line troops once again launched an offensive across the entire border of the Xinbei Kingdom with the power of a great victory. At this time, the people who were already shocked by the front-line war were even more attracted to it. Citizens across the entire network were driven directly into madness because of this border battle. Find the bookstore. No one is in class at school, and no one is working on the street. A large number of people are not eating well and sleeping well, and they are just waiting in front of the TV and mobile phones, waiting for the final outcome of this war. You know, this time Jia Yan waved his hand, and the size of the troops mobilized reached 250,000, and the entire border force was only 300,000. Except for the necessary key point defenders, it can be said that this time he was with one move, the whole body was moved, and the entire border troops of Xinhe Kingdom were mobilized. If they win, the entire border affairs will become smooth from now on, and the Xinbei Kingdom will never be able to raise its head in front of the Xinhe Kingdom again. And lost? Sorry, Xinbei Kingdom will probably not give up this opportunity. They will definitely defeat Xinhe Kingdom in one breath. If possible, they will even form an alliance with other surrounding countries to take advantage of Xinhe Kingdom's weakness. The Black Country may be removed from this planet from then on. Therefore, it is natural that the entire country is so concerned about this battle. In just 2 or 3 days, Jia Yan became a well-known star faster than all the stars and groups in this country. Of course, he is not a star, but the country's latest officially appointed deputy marshal. His status is only below that of the general marshal and several veteran generals. Even the above figures cannot directly command him. After all, I learned from the generalissimo that this young man's temper would not allow him to accept orders from others. If the battle guards in the first 2 days were like improving their understanding of Jia Yan's combat command ability bit by bit, then the war on the third day directly improved everyone's understanding of Jia Yan. The shock to him was pushed to the highest peak. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 2558. Total victory. The border front is won. Moreover, all three groups won huge victories at the smallest cost. And after this war, Jia Yan finally accepted a formal interview with the TV media. The interview process only contained a few short sentences. This victory was all within my expectations. It's too early to be shocked. What happens next may shock people across the country. After he finished speaking, he stood up and left the live broadcast camera. He showed no fear of strangers, no courtesy to the people, and even looked a little unruly. But such words caused a huge sensation in the entire Xinhe kingdom. Everyone was speculating on what the young man said would happen next. Of course, the guessing time did not take too long. With Jia Yan's efficiency and speed, he quickly revealed the answer. Unexpectedly, after the battle with the enemy on the battlefield, several frontline troops of the Nobue kingdom actually advanced directly into the borders of the Nobue kingdom after the first day's war. Several fresh troops who had not participated in the frontline battle inside the line. At this moment, after receiving the news from the frontline troops, the people across the country suddenly understood what Jia Yan was preparing to do. He is preparing to invade Xinbei kingdom. Sky. You know, the Xinbei kingdom has been the inherent enemy of the Xinhe kingdom for hundreds of thousands of years. The discord between the two parties has appeared as early as the ancestors' time. Their ancestors each believed in the mythical white god and black god. Yes, the so-called white god and black god are White Dolphin and Jia Yan, but people in this world don't really know them. But from various myths and legends, as well as energy analysis, this world, there should be two ancient gods with pure white energy and pure black energy. The energy of these two gods has great influence on the entire planet, even outer space, and even stronger civilizations that are beyond the reach of their planet. Their energy envelops the entire world. Therefore, even if it is not on this planet, all civilizations in outer space have vaguely similar disputes between the two gods. Although generally speaking, the forces that believe in the black god are at a disadvantage, but this is because of the black god. The reason why the power given to believers by God is too little, but the power of black god is more explosive. The spiritual power cultivated by cultivators that are hidden belongs to black god. Often, cultivators of the same level can. It is precisely because of the power of the black god that the stronger magicians and fighting spirit masters are killed. All in all, there is a natural and irreconcilable conflict between the Xinbei kingdom and the Xinhe kingdom. Although the two countries have become less influential on faith after entering the technological era, the contradiction between them has existed since ancient times. It exists, so it cannot disappear simply because technology has developed. Faced with such a formidable enemy, Xinhe kingdom and Xinbei kingdom would not underestimate each other too much. Even the people knew that the other side was difficult to deal with. But this time, Jia Yan, the fledgling young deputy marshal, is actually preparing to invade Xinbei kingdom's lair. Within the Xinyi kingdom, as soon as this news came out, there were certainly a large number of people who were extremely excited about this war. They believed that if the young marshal could permanently eradicate the enemy that had existed for thousands of years, he would definitely be the winner. A great thing. But there is a larger group of people who blame Jia Yan for being too hasty. If the Xinbei kingdom was so easy to eradicate, would it still be the historical enemy of the Xinhe kingdom? Don't believe that the White Kingdom has not been killed. Instead, the White Kingdom has united with the surrounding countries to launch a large-scale siege against the Xinhe kingdom. Then maybe they and the Xinhe kingdom will disappear. This young man is definitely young and energetic. He thinks too much. Call me old man, he fought well in the second battle, but he was too conceited, and he might be in trouble in the future. Hurry up and drive him out of office. Look at what he has done in just a few days since he took office. This is a leader who cannot sit still. Let him be the marshal. We believe that the entire black country will be in dire straits. A large number of people in the country expressed their dissatisfaction with Jia Yan, the deputy marshal, when interviewed by TV media. To put it bluntly, this is the force of anti-war. The anti-war people seem to be criticizing Jia Yan, but in fact they are still worried that the country's national strength will be greatly damaged after this war. Don't believe that Bai Guo's territory was not conquered much, and he became a poor and weak country. You know, there is not only one country like Xinbei Kingdom surrounding Xinhe Kingdom. Although Xinbei Kingdom is an inherent enemy, for thousands of years, Xinhe Kingdom has not fought with any of its surrounding countries. If they get the chance, it may be Nobue who destroys the country. Marshal Jia Yan, this is the content of our domestic feedback. A very young and beautiful girl stood in front of Jia Yan's office chair. She calmly read to Jia Yan the news about the country and the news about him. Then she secretly raised her beautiful eyes and looked at the appearance in front of her. Not amazing young teenager. This boy was 3 or 4 years younger than her, but he could do something that no one in history could do. On the day he joined the army, he achieved the position of deputy marshal, and within a week, he led the entire Xinhe Kingdom border troops to break through the Xinbei Kingdom's border defense line and invade their country. But even so, this beautiful girl who was appointed by the superiors and said that young people can have more common topics with young people, and who was hinted to do something to the boy, still does not support the boy like the ordinary people in the country. The practice of invading enemy territory. However, the military is the military. As a civilian secretary, she cannot express any opinions on the overall situation, otherwise she will be destined to go to a military court. It doesn't matter how the people in the country react. They can say whatever they want. I will shut everyone up after a while. But Jia Yan held a pen and paper and spoke calmly. Then he raised his head and stared at this beautiful girl with his most beautiful eyes among the only outstanding features. You also have opinions on my approach, right? I allow you to speak, just tell me what you think. This young girl who had just been assigned by the superiors was probably deliberately arranged by the Generalissimo or the entire Xinhe Kingdom military department. Jia Yan was a little bit dumbfounded at the time. Those in power might think that Jia Yan also cares about little girls, right? But his own son has given birth to a son, so how can he have such thoughts about girls? If Jia Yan was so flirtatious, he would already have a group of wives and concubines. Okay. This girl is not as pretty as Satsuma-chan, her figure is much different, and she has a bad personality. You still want to follow me? You want to eat shit? Jia Yan's gaze seemed quite aggressive, causing the girl's face to turn red immediately. Marshal, this is what you asked me to say, so I said it. She was not afraid. I think your action is too risky. Before you came to our army, we were not prepared to go to war with the enemy. But now that you have just taken office, you are about to fight a war that will affect the entire country. Don't you think this is too hasty for a powerful war? Why don't you wait a little longer, for example, after 2 or 3 years, when our army is ready to do this kind of thing again? I believe that with your ability, you can truly the great enemy of the White Kingdom will be eradicated forever. No, no, no. After listening to this, Jia Yan realized that it was still such a bullshit and trivial matter, so he shook his head repeatedly. You, the big shots around you, and most of the people in the country all underestimate me, Jia Yan. Anyway, I still say the same thing. Don't say anything, just watch from the sidelines. His indifferent words made the young man say nothing more. He gave a military salute angrily, and then left the office with the few documents Jia Yan had just given, as well as oral answers, and went to the communication office to deliver the message. His command. Don't understand? Hee, you got on my pirate ship, bah, you asked me to be the marshal, and you still want to refuse? Impossible, there is no precedent for this kind of thing to happen to my name, Jia Yan, not even the original. I told those people in Biostar to shut up. How could I still be looked down upon by you in such a small world? He was calm and composed. He is not afraid of others questioning him at all. He didn't want to confide his heart-to-heart thoughts to anyone, he just wanted these subordinates to implement his strategy well. Of course, this kind of war game is just a trivial matter for me now. What I want to do now is swallow up those cultivation resources you obtained before. Jia Yan has done so many things, not to really make this Xinhe kingdom flourish, but to prepare him to get more cultivation resources, and he still doesn't need to take away the resources with his own fighting strength. This is not good for him. He said that we can only borrow this kind of national power. Now it can be regarded as a small success and a lot of training resources have been obtained. His actions to enrich his own pockets were not concealed from anyone at all. The higher UPS in the Black Country must have also learned of his actions, but no one pointed it out to his face. After all, he is a young man who has just shown his talents. No one knows what his abilities are, and no one knows whether there is any big force behind him. If it is true as so many domestic experts and scholars have asserted, Jia Yan has a so-called guiding the team, and even he himself is a descendant trained by a big force in the starry sky, so the whole country of Xinhe may not be able to offend Jia Yan. Therefore, the fact that he stole some loot for himself should be regarded as a reward for him. After all, he was throwing his life and blood for the Nobue kingdom. Puff. In the training room, Jia Yan was holding a large amount of supplies, which gave the impression that he was not like a human being. The lumps of supplies were larger than other people's. As a result, they were swallowed up by him in 3 strokes and 5 divided by 2. The team of soldiers transporting energy and supplies from the outside actually used an entire battalion of logistics troops, and everyone looked at each other in shock. They all know that the training room is just a small square inch, but the materials they transported are so huge that they can fill the entire training room 180 times. But as it happens, this cultivation room is like the Sumi ring of cultivators. It hides a lot of space and swallows up all the large amounts of materials they transported into it. I don't even believe that he is not a disciple of a high-level outside cultivation force. After all, only outside civilizations can do this kind of thing. Yes, this way we won't be able to offend him. Alas, as long as he doesn't take our Xinhe kingdom into the pit, let him do whatever he wants. As long as he doesn't leave a pile of mess, it will be fine. This child seems to still trust us in the Black Country. He should not do such a thing. Jia Yan may not have thought that he just made himself devour faster, but that the real high-level people in the capital of Xinhe Kingdom would have a higher level of honor and tolerance for what he did. Spend. Because Xinhe and other countries all know that there are more powerful civilizations outside the planet, as well as more powerful forces and training sections. If one of them does not do well, they will offend the so-called sect or force behind Jia Yan. If you are not happy, the entire country may be destroyed in a matter of seconds. Boom. The bastards from Xinhe Kingdom. Have they all attacked here? It won't compare, they are advancing too fast. Why? Didn't I tell you about the previous war information? Isn't it true that their main force is on the other side? Why does it seem that the main force is in front of us? In the next 3 days, the entire Xinbei kingdom lived in panic. Since the arrival of the so-called young marshal, the Xinbei kingdom has become extremely radical. In successive blitzes, they have defeated several of their important towns and cities, and the border has been pushed hundreds of kilometers. You know, the size of these two countries is not much different from that of China on Earth. To advance a few hundred kilometers is already a quite exaggerated figure. And this was less than a week after the war broke out in Nobue country. The people and dignitaries of the entire Xinbei kingdom were living in panic. The entire national propaganda team of the Xinbei kingdom also went from strong condemnation at the beginning to resignation and willingness to coordinate. After that, they all turned to asking the surrounding countries to act as mediators for this war. It is a pity that Jia Yan ignored no matter what the Xinbei kingdom said, and he seemed to be brazenly advancing towards their country no matter what the Xinbei kingdom wanted to do. In this way, all the people and officials in both countries knew about his ambition. Will this great enemy that has existed for thousands of years be annexed once and for all to the Xinbei kingdom? This idea is so crazy that even a large number of people in the Xinbei kingdom feel that they are dreaming. This speed is already so slow that I am a little disappointed. Jia Yan was in the office, looking at the map, and then his face turned pale. You must know that the task he set is to conquer the entire Xinbei kingdom soon, and after that will be the process of external expansion. It takes a genius to remember the address of this website in 1 second.